I had never even thrown a football before I stepped onto the practice field for the Blanchette Bears. I had only ever done track and basketball before my senior year. I tend to prioritize individual accolades and achievements over team success. It's just the way I was raised, but I know I need to work on that. In practice, my teammates have told me that I lose my composure too easily when timing breaks down on routes or when the blocking's not great. I want to become an NFL caliber quarterback, dissecting the defense like Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, but I'm more of an improviser right now. Scouts say that I don't process the game at a high enough level to play D1 football. They might be right, but that's a major area of focus for me in my one season at Blanchette. If I had to compare my game to anyone, it would be Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M, but we'll see how things play out. I was really excited when I threw my first touchdown pass against zone coverage in the first quarter. Scouts have already said that I need to work on my accuracy as well, but in fairness, I just started throwing a football. I'm excited for my first season, but I'm also a little bit nervous getting pushed into the starting lineup at quarterback my senior year with literally no game footage. In our first game of the season, we're playing against O'Dea High School, our #1 rival. O'Dea is always a contender to win the state championship. Their quarterback plays a similar style to me, very athletic and great at short passes. Their defense is always full of talented players that would probably end up playing college ball somewhere. We have very little depth on this team too, which requires me to play a safety sometimes. My running back is Sam Howell. He's also the coach's son, so it's an interesting and kind of weird dynamic there. He's more of a receiving back, kind of in the mold of a Christian McCaffrey type of player. My #1 weapon on offense, if you haven't already been able to see, is Tien Nguyen. The dude is making every play at wide receiver in the air or after the catch. Gio Saria also caught my first touchdown pass of my career, and he's kind of a beast too. Late in the third quarter, coach draws up a motion route mesh sort of play, and I take it outside the pocket, escaping the defensive end, running it upfield. No one is there, and I finally get tackled down after picking up nearly 20 yards rushing the football, and that is my track background showing up. There's still a lot for me to learn. I have less experience than Anthony Richardson did playing college football. Coach started calling a lot of short passing concepts down in their part of the field, and I kind of ad-libbed a little bit here and there, finding Howell for a short gain. On 2nd and 1, I thought I got into the end zone, but dove a little bit too early, and on 1st and goal, handed off to Howell to give us the 21-3 lead going into the fourth quarter. I initially struggled with making reads in the option game, but Coach and I had months to prep for our first game against O'Dea, and he has the experience playing against them each year, so I relied on him for all of the play calls. On 3rd and 5, when we needed a first down the most to kind of secure the W, I do get sacked, and they get the ball back, and I give up a crucial first down pickup on 3rd and 4, playing safety, and then on the opposite side of the field, they do score a touchdown to make it a one-possession game. But it didn't really end up mattering. We got the ball back. They couldn't secure the onside, and we walk away with a 21-15 W over O'Dea in the season opener. And after securing the W, we play against Lake Serene in the second game of the season. And I'll be honest with you, I have never even heard of Lake Serene before. But I start off the game using my legs to get a 14-yard pickup on the read option keeper. Immediately after getting that big pickup, though, I do take a sack, kind of hurting the drive, making it 2nd and 17. But I find my tight end, Michael Weisbecker, to get us some yards, making it a 3rd and 1, and on the 3rd and 1, another read option keeper. I almost break it for the touchdown. And this game just became a showcase for my ability to scramble and what I can do in the read option game as I take it for another 20-yard rush on our initial drive. And then I find Tien Nguyen on the curl route, and he does the rest, taking it all the way for the touchdown. I told you he was a versatile weapon. Another read option keeper here, and I take it all the way this time for another touchdown. Coach lets me sit back and throw a deep shot to Tien Nguyen, one of my first opportunities of the season, and it gets deflected by the corner. Still working on that deep ball accuracy. I do find Tien Nguyen later, though, on a nice post route, so the medium to long range accuracy is pretty good. And then I find Howell on a halfback screen. Again, that Christian McCaffrey type of build, getting in for another score. We have a 35-17 lead at this point, and this game is basically in hand. I scramble out to the right, which has worked all game, and I take a giant shot. I told Coach after the hit that I was feeling like I lost my balance, that I wasn't sure how much time was left in the game. definitely thought I had a concussion, but he told me to get back in anyways. I take another hit on another halfback screen. And again, I'm telling coach that I probably should get pulled out of the game, but I'm still in late in the third quarter. I escape out to the right, and I'm not even looking at my receivers. I'm not sure what I'm doing here, but I take another big hit, taking a sack. And on the next play, I do end up finding Tian Nguyen, who does the work for me, gets into the end zone for another score, which basically ends the game. And at this point, man, I'm basically pissed. I'm still in the game. I'm not feeling good. I don't think I should be in the game to begin with. I think I have a concussion for sure. And my first interception of the season comes on a linebacker lurking on a curl route that I just didn't see. And again, I'm not seeing the field all right. I'm not playing at 100%. And that causes me to throw the first pick of my career. After the game, coach shakes hands with the Lake Serene head coach. And again, I'm feeling some type of way about what happened at the end of the game. And I sort of lost a little bit of trust in our coach, I'm not going to lie. And I did have an outstanding game, which resulted in scholarship offers from Oregon State and Boise State. I ultimately decided on Boise State. Going into the third game, I'm good to go at this point. I am feeling 100%. To start the game, it's a halfback screen to Alex Howell, again, the head coach's son. We go to another read option here. This time, pitched it off to Howell when I probably should have kept it. And when you're a running quarterback, you can't let the hits that you're taking dictate your style of play. I should have kept the ball on the option, and on this play, I should have scrambled instead of stopping and trying to make a throw. There wasn't enough time to make that throw. And on another option play, I make a mistake in trying to pitch it too late, not reading the play correctly, and it results in a turnover. My second turnover of my career. But I do make the correct play on the next drive with Howell finally pitching it off, getting a 9-yard gain. And after having an injury, I'd like to have more passing opportunities like I just did. But coach seems pretty dedicated to running the ball and using a lot of option plays. I continue to struggle playing safety as I give up another big gain. And on the next drive, I finally get fed up with how much coach wants to run the football. And quite honestly, I'm still upset about him leaving me in the game in our previous game, despite the fact that I had a concussion. So that all boils over as I audible every single pass play on this drive into a run with only 30 seconds remaining. I don't care. I'm just running it every single time. We're burning a ton of clock. We could take a significant lead before half. Coach is staring me down, and I don't care. He decides to bench me for the second half of the game. We do end up winning regardless, and I still get a scholarship offer from Oregon State. Going into our fourth game, we're playing against Vernon, an 0-3 team, and Tian Nguyen takes it on the drag route all the way for a 75-yard receiving touchdown, breaking a tackle as he gets into the end zone, and that kind of dictated how this whole game played out. Again, we're 3-0, Vernon is 0-3, we are much better than them, but I do take a really dumb sack, making it 2nd and 17. But on 3rd and 18, coach opens up the playbook a little bit and lets me try to make a one-on-one throw to Tian Nguyen. It does get knocked away by the corner. On the option play that we decide to run, I do make another mistake in the pitch, which results in another fumble. So I have 2 fumbles on the season now and 1 interception thrown. Tian Nguyen continuing to make crazy plays, running after the catch, breaking tackles. But I find Gio Saria for a bomb down the middle, down the seam, all the way into the end zone for a touchdown, dragging 2 defenders. And that gives us a 21-0 lead. On the following drive, Ostrander, our 3rd-string wide receiver, is starting to get a little PT, and we find him on the initial curl route. Coach calls a timeout, says look for Ostrander on the go route. One-on-one, he cannot beat his matchup, and Davis from Renton does get the interception, my 2nd interception of the season. Another triple option play where I make a mistake in not handing it off to our fullback. On this play, though, I do make the right decision. Eventually, I could have potentially, pitched it off to our running back, but I decided to keep it instead. But it results in a big gain anyways. Continuing to run triple option plays. This time, I'm going to take it all the way myself for the touchdown. Another big-time touchdown, taking that 28-0 lead against Renton. And we get the ball back once again. Renton's offense is non-existent. Coach seems to be trusting me more in passing the football. He must have listened to me a little bit after kind of my temper tantrum in Game 3. And that definitely wasn't the right way to go about it. I pissed off some teammates, but Bennett with a great catch off of the touch pass for the touchdown, showcasing my ability to not just throw bullet passes, but yeah, using a little bit of touch on some passes as well. Another read option keeper. I almost get into the end zone for another score. We hand it off to Glick on the next triple option to take a 42-0 lead. And we end up winning the game. I have a good stat line. I get an offer at quarterback from Washington State, and I get an offer at free safety. I felt really good in Game 4 of the season against Oak Harbor. I threw a perfect touch pass over the DB's head for 30 yards to start off the game, but on the very next play, I threw my first interception. Coach had completely switched the game plan up on me against Oak Harbor. He had me throwing the ball every play, whether it was a screen, a post route, or a slant. I was frustrated with myself for throwing that initial pick because I assumed he was going to limit my passing. We started running the ball a little bit more, but he still gave me opportunities to pass, and then I threw my second interception of the game, and then the DB fumbled the ball on the return. And I'll be honest, I could already hear it coming. Scouts saying I can beat up on bad record teams, but I get flustered versus the top teams in our division. I already have to fight the stigma of being a run-first quarterback because of my athletic background, and this is not going to help. I'll be honest though, I feel like my head hasn't really been in it since I started seeing this girl, Emma. See, Emma was dating my friend and teammate, Gio Saria. Yes, Gio Saria, as in the wide receiver I throw the ball to pretty consistently. And when you're a teenager, sometimes you make a dumb mistake, but I don't know if you can call it a mistake if it happens like more than 10 times. Anyways, while the team bus was loading up getting ready to go to Richland for our next away game, Emma and I were in the hallway of the school on the 3rd floor. We were tonguing each other's mouth holes when Mr. Few, my photography teacher, caught us in the hallway. Now, Blanchette is a private Catholic school, so doing any sort of PDA on school grounds was heavily frowned upon, and Mr. Few was kind of a creep. Several girls at the school had told me that he made them feel uncomfortable in his class. Now, see, the weird thing was he told us to go our separate ways and that he'd be in contact with our parents, but then I noticed that when Emma walked away that he started to walk in the same direction as her. So I decided with my spidey senses that I would follow them to make sure this dude wasn't up to anything. At one point he did stop her down the hallway and he had a separate conversation with her from the one he already had with the two of us. So I decided to make my appearance and show myself so Mr. Few knew I was there, and he reminded me that I was going to be late for the bus. And then I said back to him that we were undefeated with me at QB up to this point, so they're probably not going to leave without me since it was only like 2 minutes after we were supposed to leave. He reiterated more firmly and bluntly that I should leave immediately. So I had to think on my feet. I made up the excuse that Emma had borrowed my TI-84 calculator and she had it in her locker and I needed it tonight for some calculus homework. And I'm in like pre-algebra as a senior, so I am barely passing that class. That got him to leave us alone. And then I had a conversation with Emma afterwards, and she told me that he was being really pushy in their conversation together. And I asked her if she wanted me to report this to anybody like the dean or some teachers, and she just told me that she'd rather not for the time being. So after all of that happened, I loaded up on the bus about 5 minutes late, and we headed to Richland, Washington. Now, if you don't know the geography of Washington State, Richland is kind of more towards Oregon, kind of more towards Idaho. It's in the southeast sort of corner of Washington State. And we actually had a scout that was coming to watch me at the game and a couple of my teammates. And this guy specifically was coming from Oregon State. He actually told my coach that he was interested in me at quarterback, but he was worried about my lack of arm talent. Coach relayed that message to me before the game, and so I was on a mission against Richland to prove that I can make basically all of the throws that you'd want me to make at Oregon State. And I'm not going to lie, I started to force the ball a little bit. I started to throw some passes that weren't really there, some out-of-body sort of plays. I will say that Gio Saria was doing really well in the slot for us, but even though we had a 14-3 lead before the end of the first half, we tried to score again, and instead I threw another interception. Coach started having us run more option plays, and we scored our last touchdown of the game to give us a 20-3 lead. But I did have some more turnover struggles in this game, but we still come out with a victory 20-6. And I'll be honest, my stat line was nothing really crazy. Most of my teammates did a lot of the work for me, as I finished with only one touchdown. It was a rushing TD. And I finished 13 for 24 passing for 200 passing yards. And we ended up getting scholarships from Oregon State after the game and Boise State. So we did make progress and we got that scholarship from Oregon State. And in our next matchup, we played Mercer Island, who was 0-6. And on our first possession, I tried to hurdle somebody, and I fumbled the ball instead. Of course, you know, I got some experience with hurdling from my track background, but not with pads on. So that made me kind of jump weird. And then on our next possession, I took another sack. This time, again, my first time ever taking a safety. And so it's not looking good. We're down 2-0 to an 0-6 team, but I kind of use my legs to scramble outside of the pocket, extend the play, and find Ostrander, one of my top wide receivers. And then later in the drive, we find Nguyen on a curl, and he beats his man with his quick acceleration. And right here, I should have had Nguyen again for a bomb TD. Again, my deep ball accuracy has historically been pretty rough, but I find Bill Wilson on the very next play, our backup running back, for a 34-yard pass down the middle. And then again, on an option play, I find Bill Wilson, and he takes it all the way for a TD, making some plays at backup running back, kind of fighting for Howell's job. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows as I scramble outside the pocket at the end of the first half, up 13-9, and I fumbled the ball, and Mason recovers, and he's going to take it all the way for a touchdown to give Mercer Island, again, an 0-6 team, a 16-3 lead. But we do find a win on another drive in the third quarter for a touchdown on a slant route. And on the very next drive, we find Weisbecker, our tight end, who does all of the work after the catch, breaking a tackle, taking it for a TD. And then we find Giosaria over the middle. The middle part of the field was pretty wide open against this Mercer Island team. We find Hussein underneath on a short out. He doesn't quite get into the end zone, but on the very next play, we run a triple option, and I can easily run it in for the TD. And we explode in the second half to take a significant lead over Mercer Island and come away with a victory. And this is the kind of game that I probably should have had against Richland, but we ended up getting the Oregon State scholarship at QB anyways, so it's no big deal. But 4 total TDs, 40 rushing yards, and a good amount of passing yards as we get scholarships from Maryland and Washington State. Additionally, we've garnered some interest from 3 more teams, and we decided to stick with USC. It's interesting to see, as a track and basketball athlete switching to football for 1 year, what sort of teams that we could potentially go to. For our 7th game of the season, we were playing against the defending state champs, Bellevue. And not only were they the defending state champs, but they also had been ranked nationally for the last few years as a high school program. So on my first throw of the game with an undefeated record on the line, I get picked off by Corbet, the DB, who almost returns it for a pick 6. We get the ball back once again, and on the first play, we run a triple option, and I incorrectly pitch it off to my running back, and we turn the ball over a second time. So at this point, we're down 14-0 because of me, and I'm getting pressured outside the pocket. I throw a really bad pass to a receiver who is triple covered, and so they get the ball starting at the 40-yard line with my second interception of the game and my third turnover, and I get absolutely destroyed by one of the DBs blitzing on a play. And at this point, you could definitely say that I'm rattled. The only thing that helped us get back into the game a little bit was my ability to run the football, because coach just didn't trust me to throw the football at this point. And we scored our first touchdown midway through the third quarter. Down 14 at the start of the fourth, we still had a chance to fight back into this game. After my 20-yard scramble, I used my legs to distract the defense, leaving my running back wide open for the second touchdown of the game. Unfortunately, my defense couldn't make the last stop. They do score a field goal, and so that puts us out of the game. I score a touchdown at the last second, and we do lose 24-21. Despite the L, we get some interest from some Pac-12 teams to play quarterback between Utah, UCLA, and Stanford. Our second to last game of the season came against Mount Vernon. After taking our first L, we needed to get a W on the board to stay in the playoff hunt. I complete my first throw of the game, and I think I've fixed my early turnover problems, but unfortunately, my wide receiver and I weren't on the same page for this route, and I throw my first interception of the game. Now, I come right back and deliver an absolute dot, lofting the ball over the DB's head perfectly. I love corner routes, and my guys always gets consistently open against man coverage. We're down 7-0 to Mount Vernon, but I know we're the better team. With under 2 minutes left in the first half, I drive us down the field, finding Giosaria wide open on the same route twice in a row for a touchdown to tie the game. And Giosaria has been pretty consistent for me, despite the fact that we've had off-the-field issues. I find him again over the middle of the field for another 20-yard pickup. And with 23 seconds remaining in the first half, Mount Vernon scored a field goal already, so we're down by 3. I look for Giosaria again and throw my second interception of the game with 18 seconds remaining and almost putting them into field goal range. They do not score a field goal. But we're only down by 3 points despite the fact that I have 2 interceptions, so coach wants me to use my legs a little bit more, designs a run play for me, and on the next play, I scramble outside the pocket and pick up 8 more yards. There's 2.5 minutes left in the third quarter, and on a read option, I almost turn over the ball, but Bill Wilson makes a huge play. And on the next play, I reward him by finding him on the wheel route, wide open, almost able to get into the end zone, down at about the 5-yard line. And it turned out to be huge that he didn't get into the end zone on that play because we didn't even score a field goal on that drive. And on the next possession, I scramble outside the pocket and pick up 17 more yards rushing the football to start the fourth quarter, still only down by 3. I'm looking for my number 1 guy, Giosario, over the middle and throw my 3rd interception of the game, just forcing the ball down the middle at this point. And so my confidence is pretty much gone at this point throwing the football, but my O-line tells me to pick my head up because we're still in this game. And then my terrible 7-step drop turns into a much longer drop back, making the throwing window so small, leading to my 4th interception of the game. But believe it or not, we're still in this game with 22 seconds left. We have an opportunity to win the game if we score a touchdown. I find Giosario wide open over the middle of the field. We stop the clock after getting the first down pickup. And with 15 seconds left, we got to make up a lot of ground. So I throw a one-on-one ball up to Ostrander. He doesn't even look for it, and the DB Schneider easily intercepts the ball, leading to my 5th interception of the game, and we end up losing this game to Mount Vernon 13-7. And this ends up being the play of the game as well. Again, Ostrander not even looking for the ball, doesn't jump for it whatsoever. And the DB makes a play on it, and we lose our 2nd game of the season back-to-back after losing to Bellevue. I do get a scholarship from Arizona State, but there's only 1 game left in the season, so we're going to have to make the most of it before we go into the playoffs. After the season ended, scouting reports came out, and I compared favorably in terms of athleticism, improvisation, and throwing outside the numbers for quarterback, but they knocked me for low football IQ, character issues, and turnovers. And so they only gave me a C+ grade. We barely squeezed into the playoffs for the first time in 2 years. We had a number of seniors on the team who were trying to make one last run before their career was basically over. For a few of us, our careers would go on to college. Tien Nguyen and Giosaria were both heading off to play D1 ball. Some of our defensive players on the team were playing D1 and D2 next year as well. Our first game of the playoffs came against Edmonds Woodway High School, so they're 9-1. And I knew from the jump that I was going to have to limit my turnovers against this team to stay in the game. We were clinical on our first drive, putting together a number of really successful plays, and finally I find Tien Nguyen wide open on the curl route for our first touchdown of the game. And our second drive might have been even better than our first. I find Howell on a triple option play for a 6-yard pickup, and on 3rd and 1, I deliver a moon ball, perfect over-the-head pass to Michael Weisbecker. Just a great show of touch and control over the football. And on our next play, we run 4 verticals, and I find Howell, our running back, wide open again down the field. And who is our number 1 guy in the red zone? It is none other than Tien Nguyen picking up his 2nd touchdown of the game on a slant route. Not only am I looking really good in this game, but the D is doing their part too. We scored 2 defensive touchdowns and held Edmonds to 0 points midway through the third quarter. Coach told me mid-season to start using my legs more to create new throwing angles, and that's exactly what I did. I started scanning the field as I scrambled, working with my receivers to find openings in the defense. I'll be honest though, sometimes the running lane was just a little bit too free and I had to take it into my own hands. I scored on the read option keeper to take a 35-0 lead, and we stamped our postseason with a big first-round victory over Edmonds Woodway High School. I finished the game with a 70% completion percentage, 300 passing yards, and 5 total touchdowns. And in the second round, we got our rematch with O'Day. Again, O'Day was our rival school that consistently beat us the last few years. Some of our seniors had never beaten O'Day in their careers before we beat them this season. O'Day wanted their revenge, and I could definitely tell that their defensive line was hungry to win this game. They were flying off the line of scrimmage, getting into the backfield with ease, making standing in the pocket difficult. I already scrambled at the smallest sign of pressure, so adjusting to a defensive line that really overpowered my offensive line was something that I hadn't dealt with since we played against Bellevue. O'Day was so worried about creating pressure in the pocket, though, that they forgot to send a spy for when I might scramble. As long as I could run outside, I had a lot of space to make plays with my legs. That might have been O'Day's game plan, though. They locked up the passing game against us, forcing my receivers out of rhythm. With a minute remaining in the first quarter, we had no answers on offense for this defense. Improvisation is the only thing O'Day didn't really game plan for. I run right, drawing the D in before throwing a bullet to the backup running back, Bill Wilson. That completion got us into the red zone and in position for a potential touchdown as I scrambled outside the pocket and almost got into the end zone for the first touchdown of the game. We were down at the 1-yard line, and on the very next play, I pitched it off to Alex Howell, who ran it in for the touchdown. On our next drive, I continued to get the ball to our halfbacks. Alex Hall was able to turn this screen into a 25-yard gain. Glick, our fullback, even got involved on a triple option for a nice run. I thought I had just scored the second touchdown for us when I threw it to Nguyen on the goal line, but it turned out to be just short. On 3rd and goal, Glick took it in for the second touchdown of the game, giving us a 2-possession lead. With 20 seconds left, I misread the safety and threw it into double coverage, leading to my first interception of the playoffs. I was pissed. To start the 3rd quarter, I scored a touchdown immediately, but it happened to be for the other team. I didn't see the defensive end, and O'Day returned it for a touchdown. I had probably my best pass of the game midway through the 3rd quarter on 3rd and 12 when I found Nguyen wide open over the middle of the field for a 20-yard pickup. And on the very next play, I scrambled outside the pocket and ran it, again with no QB spy on me, going out of bounds at the 15-yard line. On 3rd and 5 from the red zone on the same drive, I look for Bill Wilson a little bit too late, and he goes out of bounds for a 1-yard loss, and we don't even make a field goal on the drive. So we still only have an 8-point lead at this point at the end of the 3rd quarter as I run for an 11-yard pickup to pick up the first down. To start the 4th quarter, we ran a triple option play where I kept it myself instead of giving it to Glick, and I got absolutely crushed on that play, taking a massive hit from one of the linebackers. And on the very next play, I throw an interception trying to find Nguyen on a post route. Walker intercepts it. And they end up scoring a touchdown off of that interception, but they go for 2 and don't complete it, so we're still up by 2 points. At this point, we're just trying to waste time. So on 3rd and 3 with 50 seconds remaining, I throw an absolute out-route dart to Ostrander, and that effectively seals the game, and we beat O'Day to advance to the semifinals of the Washington State High School football playoffs. In the semifinals, we got to play against Burien. But before we talk about Burien, we're going to talk real quick about what happened with Emma a little bit more. So someone leaked a rumor that Emma and I had been seeing each other, and it made its way into our locker room. I'm not the prototypical leader at quarterback, and I still hadn't earned complete respect from my teammates, especially after nearly sabotaging our game against Seattle Prep. Despite the fact that we were going to the playoffs, we had a lot of drama around the team. Word got to Gio that I was seeing Emma, and without even saying a word to me, he came up and knocked me out. I woke up still a little dizzy as Coach yelled at both of us to come into his office from the locker room. He told Gio and I that we were each suspended for a game, and that game happened to be the last regular season game before the playoffs. I screamed at Coach that we were about to hit the playoffs, and he looked at me with a blank stare on his face. After a few seconds without saying a single word, he stood up and walked out of the room. Gio walked out next. I got a text from my dad saying that a bunch of schools were worried about my off-the-field issues, and they might pull my scholarship offers. I hadn't received any new offers since the rumors came up about Gio and I thought that this was probably my all-time low as a football player. But I had to get mentally prepared for this playoff run. Getting back to the game against Burien, if the first quarter was my best quarter of the postseason, then the second quarter could have been my worst. I started to get in my own head. I threw my first pick of the game, and then immediately after took a terrible sack. But just when things started to look really ugly on offense, on 3rd and 37, I delivered an absolute dagger. I started to catch fire. I wanted to snatch the hearts of the Burien team and their fans. Coach called a timeout and was talking about setting up for a field goal, but I told him that we're getting this touchdown no matter what. We're ending their season on this drive. I would not be denied. I almost got sacked, but threw the defender off of me before throwing the ball away. On the next set of plays, I took matters in my own hands, scrambling for a big chunk of yards. I felt the most in control I ever had felt in this exact moment. I demanded with 2 seconds left that Coach let me throw. I ran outside the pocket with no time left and delivered a strike to Nguyen, taking a 20-0 lead. And we ended up winning 20-0. Next step, playing in the Washington State Football Championship and signing day. I'll see you in the next one. We made it to the state championship, and we were driving down the field. Coach actually put together a really good play script before the game, and everything was coming to us easy. I was making plays inside the pocket and using my athletic ability to extend plays and find different throwing angles. I was even able to extend some plays I probably shouldn't have been able to by breaking free from some sacks. But everything kind of changed when I threw the ball to Bill Wilson on this motion route, and he dropped it. It gets tipped and intercepted by a Terrace DB. At the end of the day, whose fault it was doesn't really matter in the eyes of most. Almost everyone just looks at the final box score and attributes full blame to the individual throwing the picks. So far, I wasn't proving any of my critics wrong. This is a PSA, by the way. Look, if you came here for a story of a 5-star blue-chip quarterback who started throwing the football at the age of 3 and had everything given to him, you just came to the wrong place. I have to fight for everything I get in this series. Again, starting out as a player that had no experience before his senior season throwing a football, played track and basketball primarily. It was near the start of the second quarter, still 0-0, when I found Alex Howell on this really good option pitch, and Howell did the rest, taking it all the way up to the 15-yard line, putting us in position to potentially score our first touchdown of the game. Another option play was called, and I broke a few tackles before going down, making it 2nd and 6. I displayed great patience on 3rd and 7, waiting for Hussein to clear the linebacker before throwing it to him for the first touchdown of the game. With 50 seconds left, I put together a masterclass of improvisation at quarterback, navigating edge rushers, blitzing linebackers, and excellent coverage DBs to find throwing lanes to my targets. Hussein was explosive in the passing game, having already caught 1 touchdown, and then Saria was able to finish off the drive, catching it behind the linebackers to get us a 14-0 lead at half. Mount Lake Terrace had turned the ball over to start the third quarter, and we were able to capitalize, getting another great option play, pitch off to Bill Wilson, who scored the touchdown. Before our championship game against Mount Lake Terrace at Husky Stadium, no less, a local piece came out in the Seattle Times about the altercation between Gio and I. I was painted in a really bad light, but to be honest, I couldn't say I didn't deserve it. I'd received a scholarship offer to play quarterback at the University of Washington, the school I dreamt of going to my whole life. Now, I didn't know I was going to play football for UW originally, but I grew up a huge fan, watching Isaiah Thomas and Terrence Ross play basketball, and then Jermaine Kearse and Myles Gaskin play for the football team. In this article, it was rumored that UW would be pulling their offer. Not only would I not be receiving a scholarship, but I wouldn't be receiving general admittance either to potentially play as a walk-on. My teammates picked me up when I needed it most, though. They made sure I locked into this state title game. The outside noise was not going to affect our chances of bringing back the first state championship for the school's football program since the 50s. It was 21-3 in the fourth quarter when I delivered the final nail in the coffin for Mount Lake Terrace. I scrambled out to the right, kept my head up, and delivered a beautiful lead pass over the top to Gio Saria. Gio was one of the guys who kept me in the game mentally, surprisingly. Next play, I found my number 1 wide receiver, Nguyen, on the slant for the game-sealing touchdown. My teammates and I got to celebrate after a crazy season. It was bittersweet knowing I only got this 1 year to play with the team before going to college. Speaking of college, I told everyone I was going to announce my decision after the state title game. The rumors were actually true. UW and several other teams pulled their scholarship. They cited a lack of team chemistry, a toxic locker room, and more. I was down to 3 choices: University of South Florida, Louisville, and Buffalo. After careful consideration, I decided I was going to become a Buffalo Bull. I picked Buffalo specifically because their coach sold me on the idea that I'd get to run a pro-style offense. I wanted to make it to the NFL, so I felt that I needed to develop significantly as a passer, more so than as a runner. The 2 stars on this team are Jamari Gassett, a wide receiver, and Aljay Henderson, a running back. Each of these dudes could make it to the NFL. I was getting ready to move to Buffalo towards the end of senior year when the schedules were announced. In our first week, we would be playing against the Ohio State University. Ohio State at the time was ranked number 2 in the nation, so we had a lot of work to do, and I'll see you in the next video. A week after graduation, I flew out to Buffalo, New York to prove myself to the coach, Brian Dempsey. I had 2 future NFL players on my offense in Aljay Henderson, my running back, and Jamari Gassett, my number 1 wide receiver. Coach appreciated how much dedication I showed to learning the playbook and his system. Over the course of the summer, I earned the starting job at quarterback over sophomore Cole Snyder. We needed to prepare a lot over the summer because we did not want to get punked by Ohio State. Coach wanted to ease me into my first college game against the number 2 team in the nation by focusing on running the football. He didn't ask me to make too many throws down the field to begin with, and he wanted to help me limit my turnover issues. The team had success in recent years, going to bowl games in 2 of the last 3 seasons and getting their best win in school history in 2019 in a bowl game against Charlotte. Aljay was going off, making future NFL players on this defense look like Pee-wee players. He was trucking dudes and breaking tackles at a ridiculous rate. If I said I wasn't a little nervous playing this team in our first game, I'd be lying. Despite the prep, I noticed I was second-guessing my reads a little bit, and so did Coach. He started drawing up a lot of design pass plays. I mean, wide receiver screens, short throws underneath, and simple 3-step dropbacks. I think it hurt the flow of our offense. When our coach called a 2 tight end set with Malinik, I was already a bit on edge. We still had 0 points, and I felt like it was all my fault. Then Malinik dropped the ball on the throw underneath. When I went over to the sideline, I let the dude absolutely have it. I basically told him he should convert to O-line with those brick hands. I definitely wasn't doing myself any favors trying to get my teammates to like me. Our defense was playing out of their minds. At the start of the second quarter, the score was 0-0. No thanks to us on offense. I could tell the Ohio State defensive coordinator was losing it, even though we still had 0 points. Our backup running back Robinson was also a great receiving back, but he took a nasty hit on the screen. On our first option play of the day, I get hit and fumbled the ball, leading to our first turnover, something that we just couldn't afford versus this team. I continued to rely on Gassett and Navarro to get open and get yards after the catch. Alge was fighting off contact consistently on his runs like we had already seen, channeling his inner Marshawn Lynch. I was playing really well outside of the structure of the offense, but that isn't why I came to Buffalo. I wanted to become an elite pocket QB, and bailing myself out by using my athleticism wasn't helping me to get better as a passer. I found Navarro underneath, and he did the rest of the work, making multiple defenders miss on his way to picking up a 25-yard gain and getting us in the red zone before half. Alge was having a historic game for this Buffalo program when he went down holding his leg right before half. The whole team was holding their breath. Alge was the spiritual and emotional leader of this team. As a freshman quarterback and someone who already struggled with leadership at a high school level, I definitely didn't know how to channel my own ability to inspire my teammates still. To start the third quarter, Ohio State turned the ball over on their own side of the field. My offensive line parted the seas for me, leaving me plenty of time to dissect the zone defense for our first touchdown of the game to my tight end Claude, giving us a 7-point lead. Ohio State answered back immediately, and we were locked up at 10-10 at the beginning of the fourth. Coach pulled me aside and told me that we were going to start chewing clock and running the ball, but also to look for my moments to play make. Alge was back and being a beast on the ground, and Karan Robinson was ripping off some great runs too. Justin Marshall ultimately made a huge play, racking up 20 yards on a wide receiver screen that got us into field goal range. Sadly, we weren't able to get a touchdown on the drive, and Ohio State answered the field goal that we got. So we were tied again at 13-13. We had about 30 seconds left in the game from our own 20-yard line, and I tried to play superhero. I swore I saw Bobby Curry wide open over the middle, but Ohio State's inside linebacker, Proctor, picked me off, and I was sure the game was over. They were already in field goal range, and I had put my towel over my head on the sideline, feeling sorry for myself. Somehow, they missed the field goal. We got blessed. We ended up going into overtime, and Alge made a statement play. He took this underneath pass all the way for a touchdown, tying us again, and then I made the play of my young career. Everything I didn't want to rely on is what made this play happen. Nothing was open on the initial routes, so I ran to my right. I noticed Jamari following me to the back right corner of the end zone, and I flicked a laser to him. He got his feet in, and we took a touchdown lead. Ohio State couldn't answer, and we pulled off the biggest upset in college football history. If we were in Buffalo, I'm sure the fans would have gone absolutely crazy and rushed the stands, but instead, Ohio State fans were throwing bottles, cups, and popcorn at their own team. After the game, all of us went out partying in Ohio, celebrating before what was bound to be a legendary season for the Bulls. After our first game against Ohio State, most of my teammates felt that we should be in the top 25. I mean, it only made sense after knocking off the second best team in the nation. Our next game came against Baylor, and they were also 1-0. On our first drive, it was an absolute disaster. Coach could sense how confident I had become after our first game, and he started with a pass play, but I took a sack that set us back 18 yards because I was trying to extend the play. Baylor's defense came to play. They made every yard, every first down a struggle. We found ourselves down 10-0 in this rain game, and I felt like I was legitimately carrying the offense. I was throwing dots, finding Gassett, Curry, and Claude wide open for big first down pickups. Claude and Navarro were really stepping up. Each of them were getting a lot of yards after the catch and making big explosive plays for us. So it felt like this drive had to end in a touchdown for us. We had all the momentum. I was making defenders miss, and it felt like we could do no wrong on offense. Even some of our backups like LeBourne were making big plays. We got down into the red zone where on 3rd and 10 we were placed in a tough spot. Despite being incredibly accurate on the drive, Coach had us run a halfback screen that didn't pick up the first down. We ended up missing the chip shot field goal and not making any progress. You'd think I wouldn't be feeling a lot of pressure coming off of our week 1 win, but now we had expectations. My coach and teammates expected us to win against Baylor. Obviously, Baylor couldn't be as good as Ohio State, right? I'll be honest, I was immature. I think I started to get rattled thinking about some of the expectations surrounding my play. Back when I was in high school, I had teammates who lifted me up and made me a better player. With Buffalo, it didn't feel the same yet. While I had spent about the same amount of time with his team, we didn't spend nearly as much time together off the field. A lot of us had different goals outside of football, going to different programs all the way across campus. A lot of the guys on this team were also from New York. They had friends outside of school and I didn't. The one guy who always made sure, though, to invite me to their family barbecues this last summer was Jamari Gassett. The dude was just a great teammate and a great friend. It was important that we developed that QB wide receiver chemistry as much as possible, but it didn't feel like we had that versus Baylor. We needed a touchdown and we needed it now. Coach continued to limit my ability to throw the ball down the field, calling short pass plays the last 2 drives. Ultimately, not being more aggressive is what put the nail in the coffin for us. After we couldn't score with 4 minutes left in the fourth, we fell behind 24-3 and the game was effectively over. We were stunned. We had just come off the biggest upset in college football history, and we delivered a dud in Texas. We were inept offensively, and I was at least partially to blame. After the game, everyone went their separate ways. Nobody wanted to meet to go over game film for next week, so I did it by myself. I definitely felt isolated after letting the team down. Coach called me into his office the next day after the game to discuss what happened, and then he dropped some news on me. So, after the Baylor game, I got benched for Cole Snyder. I sat on the bench for 6 games waiting to earn the job back. After starting out 1-2 and beating the number 2 team in the nation, our record slipped to 3-5 since I was benched. I'd like to say that I was grinding to get my job back, but really I was more like Alex Moran from Blue Mountain State. I was chilling, just going through the motions and not taking being the backup quarterback too seriously. So when Coach Dempsey inserted me into the starting lineup for a snow game at home versus a 6-2 Ohio team, I didn't get any sleep Friday night before the game. I got my roommate to give me some of his Adderall so I could stay locked in studying Ohio's defense and their star corners Torrey Cox Jr. and Chris Atkinson. Especially with this weather and the wind, my passes were floating like crazy. I just didn't have the required arm talent to win this game through the air, but I had several mental lapses trying to pass the ball instead of just tucking it and running it. It felt like the Ohio guys had a field day picking off my passes. Each time they celebrated, it was like a punch to the gut. But it didn't stop with just 2 interceptions. The interceptions continued to pile up as the field got harder and harder to see. It was a borderline whiteout. That game was a wake-up call. It made me realize that I couldn't just coast through being the backup QB. I had to step up and take my role seriously. From that moment on, I poured my heart and soul into being the best quarterback I could be. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to put in the work, both on and off the field. That snow game was just the beginning of my journey to reclaim my position and prove that I had what it takes to lead a team to victory. Justin Marshall was balling for sure, getting himself a touchdown catch, but when I tried to make the game closer in the 4th quarter, I hit Booby Curry right in the hands over the top and he dropped it. The very next play, my 5th interception. I was surprised Coach didn't pull me, but I think he was in shock at this point. We had fallen so far as a team this season, from the high of beating Ohio State to the low of losing to Ohio and throwing 5 interceptions in the process. We ended up losing the game 24-6, and unsurprisingly, I ended up getting benched for the remainder of the season. Our final record ended up being 5-7, and Coach told me that he wanted to give me a heads up that I should transfer because he was getting a quarterback in the transfer portal to fill Cole Snyder and I's spots at quarterback. I decided to go back to Seattle early in March to think it over. In the offseason and during the transfer portal, I started working at a waste removal company to make some extra money since I didn't have any NIL deals. I ended up slipping between 2 stairs and badly injuring my ankle, almost fracturing it. I was feeling sorry for myself. I started to gain weight, going from 185 pounds up to 215 pounds, and not the good kind of weight. Eventually, my family helped me pull out of that depression, and I started volunteering. I started to worry less about childish things like my self-image and the popularity of myself, and I wanted to become a leader. I wanted people to trust me, and I wanted to help them achieve their dreams, unlike what happened in Buffalo. Although I will say that Jamari Gassett, my wide receiver, and Aljae Henderson, my running back, did end up making the NFL. Gassett got drafted in the 4th round, and Aljae got drafted in the early 3rd. I started doing private workouts for a few college teams. During the offseason, I continued to work on my throwing and my decision making. I had to focus on that a bit more because my ankle injury was still lingering. Louisville had offered me to become a walk-on before I went to Buffalo, so it wasn't too crazy that they'd still be interested in me as a backup quarterback. They just came off of a season where they were ranked in the top 25 to finish the season, and I started out as the 2nd string quarterback, and I started to work like crazy during practice and film study so that I could take the starting job. In preseason, we were ranked in the top 25, with the quarterback position still up for grabs. The talent on the team was insane. Jawar Jordan was a great one-cut back, Tyler Hudson and D. Wiggins were 2 senior wideouts who excelled at route running and jump balls, and Amari Huggins-Bruce was a huge deep threat, and then Marshawn Ford was the X-factor of this team offensively at tight end. After Doman ended up getting mono before the season opener, I was put in the starting lineup. Now, I just had to stay there this time. Our first game of the season came against Marshall. So far in my career, I was 1-2, so I couldn't take any team lightly, and we had bowl game aspirations. The sophomore Huggins-Bruce was outstanding in the first game of the season, playing like Tyreek Hill. Despite easily working our way down the field multiple times on offense, we were down 9-14 to start the 4th quarter, settling for 3 field goals in the red zone. I don't know if it was all the practice or just having better receivers, but I was throwing absolute dots to my new offensive weapons. We scored another field goal, and we were still down 12-14 with a minute left. We had the ball, and we were already in field goal range, so Coach just had us run the ball to burn time. Finally, Jawar Jordan got into the end zone for a touchdown, securing us an 18-14 lead and eventually getting us our first W of the season. Our next game came against Kentucky. The winner gets the right to the Governor's Cup each year, and in our previous season when I was at Buffalo, we lost to Kentucky, so it was time to bring that cup back to Louisville. I'll be honest, this was probably my best college or high school game ever. I had never made these kinds of throws before. I always lacked the throwing power and the arm talent overall to hit my targets deep down the field, but I was spreading it out to all of my receiving threats. Hudson and Wiggins were doing well, and Marshawn Ford was already making some insane catches over defenders. Not only was I throwing it well, but I was scrambling a little bit despite the nagging ankle injury. I still had a brace on my ankle that limited my mobility, and my athletic training staff told me that I had a set limit on the amount of times I could go full speed, scrambling outside of the pocket for now. I'll be honest, the way we were playing offensively, Kentucky didn't have a prayer to begin with, but on top of that, the D locked down Kentucky's offense and forced some turnovers. Speaking of turnovers, I didn't have a single turnover in my first 2 games for Louisville, which was definitely different from when I was at Buffalo. I really think this offense suits me as a dual threat quarterback, and I have to admit I probably wasn't ready for a full-on pro-style offense that primarily relied on my arm talent. The offseason reps really paid dividends though. I felt like I unlocked new throwing angles and bigger windows for my receivers. In the end, we took the win 27-10, and we'll see what the rest of my sophomore year has in store in the next Dragon Ball Z. Next episode. You guys, we're getting closer. We've almost raised $100 for my local homeless shelter. Those that are new to the channel, every new subscriber up to 1,000, I'm matching with a $1 donation. There is no time limit for this. Donate $1 for free today and subscribe. Thank you again to everyone who has already helped. We started off the season 2-0, and we were quickly climbing the top 25 rankings. This was a level of team success that I hadn't experienced since high school. JMU definitely came to play though. They were hungry after starting the season 0-3, but Jawar Jordan didn't care. 25 took it all the way for a touchdown on 3rd and 21. Jawar is deceptively quick at halfback. I caught the defense lacking on this play. Playing man defense against me equals free lanes to run and punish the defense. I mentioned before that I worked on my throwing power and kind of my accuracy overall, but the biggest improvement I probably made was game sense. I knew what the defense was trying to do in most situations, so it ultimately came down to whether my teammates would make the plays for me and whether I could get the ball to my receivers. Even though we started out hot, JMU wasn't backing down. Midway through the second quarter, I scrambled outside of the pocket and put a few moves on defenders before I got hit and fumbled the ball. They scored a touchdown, and we were down 9-6 before half. I threw a last-second Hail Mary to the end zone, which was picked off, but it didn't really matter, but it didn't really help the stat line either. Near the end of the third quarter, we were driving down the field, and I found my backup wide receiver Downing, who took this wide receiver screen for a first down pickup before getting absolutely laid out by a DB. We got into the red zone with help from my wide receiver 1, D. Wiggins, before Jawar Jordan ended up finding the end zone for his second touchdown of the day. Near the beginning of the fourth quarter, we had the game in our hands. We had the ball with a 4-point lead, but JMU refused to quit. They forced us into another 4th down situation. I had 2 reads, either hit my deep route over the middle or hit my corner route on my left. I trusted my instincts, and honestly, I had to make this throw to avoid a sack anyways, and it ended up getting picked off. Luckily, they didn't do anything with the ball, and we had a chance to run out the clock with 2 minutes remaining in the game. I threw D. Wiggins open over the middle before throwing a terrible ball to Marshawn Ford. Ford beat his man and was wide open, but I didn't give him a chance to make a play. We ended up not even getting a field goal, while James Madison came down and scored a touchdown, giving them a 3-point lead. We weren't ready to give up our first L though. With 30 seconds left, I orchestrated a drive that put us into field goal range in time to tie the game and send us to overtime. In OT, I was getting what I wanted, running the ball at will. Then a huge mistake happened. I probably could have run the ball in a tie game and sent us to the next round of OT on 4th down, but instead I tried to pass it to Chris Bell, who inexplicably was sprinting out of bounds, no toe tapping whatsoever. The dude caught the ball just out of bounds, and JMU came away with perhaps the biggest upset in their school's history. Needless to say, we lost our top 25 ranking after losing to an 0-3 James Madison team. We couldn't hang our heads for too long though. We had a matchup against an even better team in Cincinnati the following week. They were only 1-2, but they definitely had a lot of talent on the team. I started to hear some rumors around the team questioning my skill set, especially with my lackluster resume at Buffalo. Marshawn Ford stepped up and delivered a speech telling teammates that I was going to help this program reach new heights as long as we came together as an offensive unit. The game against Cincy started out rough. The defense was doing a great job breaking up passes and playing blanket coverage on D and Amari. They must have a great DB coach with players like Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant starting in the NFL. We found ourselves down 14-0 in the second quarter before scoring our first touchdown. I wanted to prove Ford right, and I hyped myself up before the game listening to some Key Glock and Gunu. I think it must have worked because I caught fire in the second quarter. I started making the throws that I dreamt of making in my year at Buffalo. I had touch on the ball, I had accuracy, and I had a complete awareness of what the defense wanted to do. The cherry on the top was that the D was so worried about the throws I was making that it started making the running game and my scrambles even easier. We went from being down 14-0 to being up 35-14 in the blink of an eye. I finished the game with 6 total touchdowns, 4 passing and 2 rushing. In our next game, we were going to be playing against another team with a losing record. Temple was 0-4, but we knew we needed to take care of business after our nearly season-ruining loss against JMU. I think that loss was a great lesson for us, though, that we couldn't take any team lightly despite personnel and team record. We still need to show up and actually execute to get these wins. That's why we play the game. JMU out-executed us, and they forced 3 big turnovers, along with a couple 4th down stops. As long as our O-line blocks their assignment, our receivers run crisp routes, and I make the right read, we should be unstoppable. My mindset shifted after Buffalo from being worried about what I can win, where I can go, and what I need, to what my teammates need to succeed. Not only am I more focused on my teammates' success, but I just have extremely talented teammates, and I've started to build chemistry with them over the course of the season and during practice. I'm slowly trying to have a real voice in the huddle that my teammates can rally around. For now, that falls on our X Factor, Ford, but Marshawn is a senior, and next year, someone is going to have to step into that role. As a junior, I'd love to lead our younger players and help the team in whatever way that I'm needed. It's kind of like passing in basketball in the sense that when you're selfless, the energy just shifts in the team. Nobody is looking to get their own, and everybody is actually working together. I'm not totally selfless yet, though. I still want my individual accolades. I want to prove UW and Buffalo wrong. I want to show the world that I can be elite still. Midway through the second quarter, I was doing just that. I was making accurate throws, solid reads, and managing the game. Yeah, you could say I'm doing well against these losing teams, but we played the hand that we're dealt. Temple just stands in the way of us being 4-1 in our first 5 games, a record that I still hadn't achieved since high school. I want that team success badly. Getting a bowl game isn't enough, getting in the top 25 isn't enough, winning the conference isn't enough. I want the college football playoffs for Louisville and my teammates, and I want the Heisman on top of that. Yeah, they're lofty goals, but I've still got 2 more seasons to take this program to new heights, like Ford said. Late in the fourth quarter, we were up 24-8, and coach just had us basically run the ball down their throats. Jawar was having another great game on the ground. He ended up finishing the game with 2 scores and 180 rushing yards. I told you we had talent on this team, which makes the JMU loss even more inexcusable. But we're past it now. We can't change the past, just have to move forward and do the best we can with the remaining schedule that we have. We can still have a shot at making the college football playoffs if other teams lose. Regardless, these seniors want a good bowl game. This team has the talent to win our conference without a doubt. All things considered, my sophomore season was off to a really good start. We were 4-1, and our next game was against Charlotte. After losing to JMU, we almost lost our spot in the top 25. I was still struggling to find my throwing angles and reducing turnovers overall. I think Charlotte was so bad that it raised everyone's confidence. Everyone was ripping off chunk yard plays. I was making some great throws, and despite a few turnovers, we had a solid offensive performance. Again, this is against a 1-4 team, so it should be expected. I will say that the defense has really started to pick it up in the last few games, and especially TJ Quinn, our starting middle linebacker, who is currently in consideration for being an All-American as a sophomore. We had some other really good defensive players, but TJ Quinn stood out and was like the defensive version of me. Hopefully we can bring some jewelry back to Louisville during our time together. Jawar Jordan was playing really well and scored a second touchdown, giving us a 14-0 lead in the second quarter. Charlotte was showing no signs of life midway through the game, so I put the dagger in them before half, finding Chris Bell wide open for our 3rd touchdown of the day. Jawar finished with over 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and we walked out with the W. Our matchup against UCF was probably the biggest game that I've ever played in. My only issue was that coach played incredibly conservative. We barely passed, and if it was 2nd or 3rd and long, we'd just run it and give up on the drive. We were down 7-0 early, and with 2 minutes left in the half, we still hadn't scored. I drove us down the field, finding D. Wiggins and Marshawn Ford for a few catches. We made our way to the red zone, where we got stopped and had to settle for a field goal. It was a chip shot, to be honest, but we missed it. To start the second half, we got the ball after a fumble on UCF's side of the field. We had great positioning, but we ran the ball the first 2 plays and got no yards. And then on 3rd down, I couldn't find a receiver and tried to pick up the first scrambling, but I got body slammed into the turf and I fumbled the ball. But when we needed it most, down 21 points, I showed up. I channeled my inner Lamar Jackson, taking a read option keeper for a nearly 80-yard touchdown to put us back within 2 scores in the 3rd quarter. We started getting really aggressive going into the 4th quarter. We had 2 drives get down to the red zone, and coach had us go for it on each 4th down. One play was a run for Jawar Jordan that we didn't convert, and another was an incomplete pass. We had a little more than a minute left, still down by 14. Finally, Chris Bell burnt his man in press coverage off the line of scrimmage, and I found him in the end zone for the second touchdown of the game. Now, since we only had one timeout left, we had to rely on an onside kick recovery. Unfortunately, UCF recovered and we took our second L of the season. Disappointment, again, is the result of unmet expectations. Despite winning more games my sophomore year than I did in my entire time at Buffalo as a freshman, I was still disappointed because we had higher expectations as a team than being a barely top 25 team in a random bowl game. There is a common phrase that was especially true in this moment. When it rains, it pours. The bad vibes around the locker room infected our play. I was especially struggling. 3 of my first 5 passes were picked off in the first quarter, the last one resulting in a pick 6. I mean, I completely regressed. I was making terrible reads, and USF's defense was totally capitalizing. No dropped picks whatsoever. I was trying to run outside the pocket, but USF's D was swarming. I got hit pretty hard, and luckily I fumbled the ball out of bounds. We were hanging by a thread offensively. I feel like Coach was about to bench all of us. Receivers were getting bodied off the line. Marshawn Ford couldn't get open, and Jawar Jordan was averaging about 2 yards per carry. We were boxed by a 3-4 team. I never knew where college football would take me when I was in high school, but I did not expect this. I got my scholarship pulled to go to UW. I played 3 games at Buffalo and got benched, and moved to Louisville with a ton of talent, and we were losing to James Madison and USF. The UCF loss was at least somewhat respectable and defensible, but if we want to win our conference or win a big bowl game, we would need to improve across the board. And it started to get ugly near the beginning of the fourth quarter. I made a forward throw that was called as a fumble, which was recovered, and then later I got hit on a scramble and fumbled one more time. I took a hard hit to the ribs, and then I had to sit the rest of the game, and I had to wait to get evaluated to determine how long I was going to be out. Something needed to change. At 5-3, we were not guaranteed a bowl game. Even though we had lost 2 of our last 3 games, we needed to finish the season strong. We were not going to go down that road of spiraling into just a ton of losses. We had a tough game against SMU ahead. We did nothing offensively in the first quarter, and we've been having some slow starts the past few weeks against teams like Central and South Florida. It was another game where we had big plays offensively, but we couldn't capitalize once we got into the red zone. We decided to go for it on 4th, and I feel like the read options are really easy ways to at least pick up 2 yards. We got some great lead blocks on the outside, and I took it all the way for our first touchdown. Of course, when we score, SMU's got to score too. So we're still down 3 when I made an insane touch pass over the top to Marshawn Ford, who caught it over 4 defenders. Amari Huggins-Bruce ran a great post, getting wide open in zone coverage. We found ourselves in the red zone again, and I ran it myself for a second rushing touchdown of the game. To start the third, SMU scored another touchdown. I led us down the field again with some pinpoint passes. I still remember when people said I couldn't make these kinds of throws. Hudson got wide open on the slant. Nobody can stay with him man on man. Finally, our defense got a stop. I was trying to keep my eyes downfield on most of my scrambles, and I almost took a sack because of it, but I think that the weight that I put on in the summer must have helped me get a little bit stronger. I stayed upright and juked a few defenders. I would have taken it all the way, but my foot just barely touched the sideline. They got pressure on 3rd down and knocked the ball away before it could hit D. Wiggins, so we settled for 3 and SMU came down and tied it up. I stayed poised in the pocket and made my progressions, looking at the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd options. I was starting to actually develop some patience. I didn't feel the constant need to run outside of the pocket and break out of my 3 and 7 step drops. Sure, Coach was still running some designed rollouts, but I felt like I was playing more within the structure of the offense. And then I got lit up on an option play. I thought I still had some time to lateral to Jawar Jordan, but I got hit so hard I just dropped the ball and SMU recovered it, and left us with just 1 minute to tie it up. Again, man, it felt like the offense was clicking across the board, whether it was the passing game, the running game, or my scrambles. We got down to their 40-yard line, and they dropped back into cover 3. I like to attack the single high safety with our 4 vertical routes. The safety faced the right side, so I looked left and found our fastest dude on the team wide open, and he did the rest. We ended up winning 31-27, and we had another test against number 14 Rutgers up next. Rutgers had only 1 loss this season. We were playing really well on offense, but sometimes fluky stuff happens. Jawar fumbled on a big hit, and luckily they only got 3 points from it. Some mock drafts already had come out at this point in the season, and some of my teammates were projected to be drafted. Specifically, Marshawn Ford, my tight end, was supposed to go in the top 3 rounds somewhere. Tyler Hudson was also a late-round wide receiver, and so was D. Wiggins. Jawar Jordan may enter the draft after his junior year, or he might stay and play his senior year at Louisville. I think we can raise all of their draft stocks if we continue to pick up W's, which is obvious, but as long as we get a solid bowl game, that will help as well. If I'm being honest, Marshawn Ford is definitely the X factor of this offense, and then it's probably Amari Huggins-Bruce, the junior wide receiver. I think D and Tyler Hudson have a chance to be drafted, but I don't think they really have the athleticism or the production that will make them stand out at the combine or during the draft process. But we'll just have to wait and see. It was tied near the end of the first quarter, and we were driving down the field. Wiggins ran a great corner route, but it was just short, making it 4th and inches, and Coach put in the field goal team and ran a fake field goal that got us a touchdown. Up by 1, Marshawn absolutely killed this DB on this double move, faking outside, coming back inside for the easy touchdown. Rutgers was able to score and make the 2-point conversion, so we had 50 seconds to get in position for a field goal that hopefully our kicker can actually make. The dude consistently misses from 30, so I don't know. I dot Amari over the middle and put us in position for an easy field goal. He does end up nailing the 15-yarder though with 2 seconds remaining, and we pull off the huge upset, and just like that, we're fighting for a really solid bowl game, and we're back in the top 25 conversation. Our last game of the season came against Memphis. We were playing at home, so this was basically senior night, a final send-off to all the graduating players on the team. And we couldn't finish the season at home with an L after 2 huge ranked wins. Melton ran a great out route and picked up a huge first down on 3rd. Marshawn Ford got in for his first touchdown. You might be curious if we have a backup tight end that's solid, and Des Melton is definitely going to step in at tight end, and he won't be as good as Ford, but he will be a really good receiving tight end. He's actually faster than Ford and more of a route runner too. Coach added lots of design rollouts in this game, and for my second touchdown, I found none other than Des Melton on this beautiful drop-in touch pass. At some point, if you look at my progression as a passer going back to my senior year at Blanchette, you'll see how many more throws I can make. I used to be able to make wide open throws to receivers on slants, curls, and out routes, but now I'm able to fit balls into really tight windows. I can really squeeze them in, and my receivers have gotten really good at locating these balls and grabbing them out of the air. Aside from Des Melton, 2 huge pieces of the offense next year are going to be number 1, obviously Amari Huggins-Bruce, and number 2, Chris Bell. So Chris Bell is shaping up to be an even better receiver than D. Wiggins or Tyler Hudson. He's a little bit more athletic, and overall he's a more technical receiver with great hands and a solid route tree. Up 2 scores, I had all day on this play to run, but I stayed patient and waited for linebackers to swarm me. Once they did, Amari was wide open and brought it in for a nice catch going down near the 30-yard line. Memphis did make some respectable plays on defense in the red zone on this drive, stopping me from scrambling pretty consistently. I expected zone coverage on 2nd down, but I still expected my receivers to find dead spots in the zone, but nothing was really open. On 3rd down, we were supposed to run a wide receiver screen, but they played man, and the DB was all over my wide out. I didn't want to throw it away and just give up on the play, but I also wasn't throwing a pick. We had a solid lead over Memphis, and we had gotten better lately at holding onto these leads, reducing turnovers, and continuing to run the clock. Some of that stuff killed us earlier in the season. We finished this season with 3 losses inside the top 25, and now we had to wait to find out who we were playing in our bowl game. Nobody talks about how important bowl games are, man. All the recruits you've brought to home games all season will be tuned in to see how you do. So all the potential freshmen next year are going to judge how we do in this bowl game, and it's going to affect whether they decide to commit to Louisville. And you might be wondering why I care about the future recruiting class when next year I'm going to be a junior, but you have to play the long game. We're going to do even better next year, and if we get some crazy good freshman receivers or running backs or whatever, they may not play next year, but during my senior year, they definitely will play. Of course, that depends on whether I decide to stay in college after my junior year or not. This season had a lot of ups and downs, so I'm not on any future mock drafts, even as a late round pick, so I'd be facing an uphill battle to find a roster spot if my college career ended right now. The thing I do know though is that I'm starting to get some NIL deals, so that may affect my decision to stay in college too. I'm finally not totally broke, and if I play even better next season, I'll probably get even more big brand deals. I would say we got screwed having to play North Texas as the 15th ranked team, but it's hard to talk when we're down 14 in the 2nd quarter. Everyone on this team though is dedicated to the mission. You know, Marshawn Ford and D. Wiggins and Tyler Hudson are all playing despite the upcoming draft. I respect the loyalty to the program, and it's definitely hard to find nowadays with all the changes in college football. North Texas defense is definitely underrated though. They were boxing up our offense, making us scrap for yards. Finally, I broke outside the pocket and ran it for our first touchdown of the game, all while 2 defenders were chasing me down from behind. Now down by 7 points, I can smell blood in the water. North Texas had no expectations coming into this game as an unranked team, but once they got the lead, they realized how important this was. I threw a dot to Amari Huggins-Bruce to get us past midfield, but North Texas wasn't giving up so easy. They started getting pressure with less than a minute left, hitting me once when I was making a throw, and then again, they got me for an 8-yard sack, making it 3rd and long. We weren't able to score before half after I threw the pass to Tyler Hudson for a gain of only a couple of yards, but we did start the second half with the ball. We haven't talked, by the way, enough about the media's opinion of me. After flaming out at Buffalo my freshman season, expectations were low as a backup QB to start the year, obviously. I didn't have a Heisman level season in my first year at Louisville, but I also didn't have a terrible year either. I was probably a net 0. I mean, I didn't hurt the team, but I also didn't take us over the top. I hadn't been a game changer. I wasn't like actually undeniable yet as a quarterback. My throwing had gotten better, but it was by no means elite. I still threw stupid picks, and I left myself open to taking big hits when I scrambled. I still wasn't going full speed after my ankle injury before the season. I was playing through pain, but you know that cannot be an excuse. I actually ran the ball pretty well despite the injury. The problem was my anticipation as a passer and my overall inability to command the offense. I said before that Marshawn Ford was the leader of this team as the best player on offense, but what would it take for me to reach that? Is it as simple as just being the best, or do I need other leadership characteristics? How much do the optics matter in the public eye? Can I win over everyone as a leader from
just our workouts and practices. These are the things that I thought about as a really inexperienced quarterback. I mean, I only played 1 year of high school and 3 games of college ball before coming to Louisville. Getting back to the game, down 2 scores, I found, guess who, Marshawn Ford, showing up at the most important time, getting us back within 3. Our defense was able to get a huge stop and use all 3 timeouts against NT to give us the ball back with 1 minute left. I really didn't want to take an L in my first bowl game. I found Ford again for a first down pickup, and on the next play, I made one of my biggest throws of the season, hitting Bell on a deep route on the far side of the field, something that I definitely couldn't have done a year ago without getting picked off. On the very next play, I found Bell once again on a slant route to get us into the red zone. We had 40 seconds left and we were well within field goal range, but of course we were trying for the W. I scrambled outside of the pocket and took a big hit, even though I just said I needed to limit them. I tried to get up and my ribs were broken. I couldn't use my core at all. We went to a commercial timeout and I asked for them to numb me up, but coach said it would be irresponsible to put me back in. It was hard to watch from the sideline, to be honest. With 20 seconds left though, Conley came in and delivered a dime to Bell again, giving us a 4-point lead with 15 seconds left. We ended up storming off the field after we took the win, and I was super happy for my seniors. We all celebrated. I was in crutches, but I was really happy for Conley. The dude didn't get any PT this season, but it was great that he got to celebrate in the moment. I couldn't wait for junior year. Again, I'm going to raise my game to another level come junior season. Hats off to North Texas, though. They really made it a game, and they made us earn it. Speaking of my seniors earlier, though, let's check out how my teammates from Buffalo that got drafted performed last season.
First, we'll go to my teammate LJ Henderson, who had almost 1,000 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns, along with 3 receiving touchdowns and 200 receiving yards. And next we have Jamari Gassett, who had 300 receiving yards and no receiving touchdowns as a rookie.
Entering my junior season, expectations were incredibly high. I was tasked with bringing the best ever football team to Louisville. The best finish we ever had was as the number 6 team in the nation in 2004 with an 11-1 record. As I entered a new stage of my career as a veteran to the freshmen and sophomores entering the team, my leadership had significantly improved over the summer. I was working out with incoming freshman receivers and I was doing one-on-ones with my backup quarterbacks. I used to care a lot about individual stats and accolades, but now I believe that making the right play and bringing a great team atmosphere equates to winning, and winning will cure literally anything. And we got a little taste of success last season, and now we want the whole load. In our game against Notre Dame, I would show my versatility as both an elite Lamar Jackson-like runner and as an okay, passable Lamar Jackson-esque passer. I mean, seriously, just kidding. Lamar's passing gets slept on. As a matter of fact, though, as a Louisville alum, Lamar did work with me in the offseason on a few things. And no, it wasn't just sprints. Lamar taught me how to make throws when you have the worst receivers in the league. Basically, if you notice that the defense is playing man coverage, you just look down the field and then 2 seconds later, you just run it yourself. Fuck them receivers. Imagine thinking Odell is going to fix that team. Anyways, I got off topic, and I don't have bad receivers. Chris Bell and Amari are actually really good, and they took another step towards making the NFL this offseason for sure. And I couldn't forget Jawar Jordan. I was super happy he decided to return for his senior year. He is one of the fastest running backs in college football this year, and he is a pretty good power back too. Getting back to the game though, despite playing incredibly well on offense, we still only had 17 points and we were down a score to Notre Dame. I took a deep shot and almost got picked off, but I didn't let that throw me off like it used to. I hit Amari on a slant to pick up the 3rd down on the next play, but he limped off the field. And then I told coach that we needed to go for it on 4th down later in the drive or Notre Dame might put the game out of reach, and we got down to the 3-yard line and we ran a really smart speed option to the right and got in for the touchdown. Coach told me that Amari was out the rest of the game and he was likely going to miss about half of the season too. I rallied the team around me after Notre Dame scored another touchdown and I asked them, who wants to eat a W? So I ran it for 48 yards, getting us back in the red zone. And then on 2nd and goal, Jawar Jordan just barely is not able to get into the end zone, but he's able to walk in for free on 3rd and goal to tie the game again. Somehow Notre Dame ends up turning the ball over on their own side of the field with 20 seconds left, leaving us an opportunity to kick a game-winning field goal, and we end up making it, walking off with a comeback win to start the season. And our second game wouldn't be any easier as we played against our state rivals, Kentucky. If you're still watching at this point in the video, why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. 90% of you are not subscribed to the channel, but every sub is $1 donated to charity until we hit 1,000 subscribers. Anyway, let's get back to the video. With 3 minutes left in the first quarter, I broke away for a rushing touchdown, and then Kentucky ripped off 2 straight touchdown drives to take a 14-7 lead with 3 minutes left in the first half. Kentucky's defensive ends had been doing a really poor job of containing, so I got an easy opportunity to run outside side to the right and had plenty of room to run down the field, but I made the horrible mistake of trying to put another move on a defender and I turned the ball over on a fumble. Luckily they didn't score, but I was definitely feeling Amari's absence on offense. He took the top off the defense and gave Chris Bell and Rich Crawford plenty of space to work underneath. Of course, without Marshawn Ford, our All-American tight end, on the roster this season, since he went to the NFL, questions came up about who was going to lead this team, and I didn't outright say that it was me because I wanted to show that it was me for my play on the field. Finally, having my ankle healed and my brace removed gave me so much more agility and acceleration. Once again, Kentucky's defensive ends did a poor job of containing, and I scrambled in for another touchdown to give us a 21-14 lead. And once again, what am I doing? I'm running outside of the pocket, finding plenty of room, and this time, I still had not learned my lesson, and I tried to jump over a defender, fumbling the ball before it can go out of bounds, though it was recovered by Kentucky. On the next drive, I threw a really bad interception that almost turned into a pick six. Luckily, he went down out of bounds near our 25-yard line, but they did end up tying the game 21-21. Rich Crawford is another one of those elite freshman receivers on the team. The only thing that's a bummer is that I wouldn't be able to see how good this dude is when he becomes a senior. I mean, I'll be able to watch him, but I won't be able to play on the same team as him. On 3rd and 9, I find an underutilized receiver, Elijah Downing, for another touchdown, and now it's 28-28 with 1:44 left in the 4th quarter, and we're marching down the field slowly, trying to use up all the clock that we possibly can. Jawar Jordan catches this ball on the flat and takes it for a 21-yard pickup, again, using that elite speed to create huge plays. Rich Crawford once again getting open with 1:18 left. And I guess Jawar Jordan was a little bit tired, so Maurice Turner has come in and picked up another first down. And at this point, we're just trying to waste clock and eventually kick a game-winning field goal. We do put 3 seconds left on the clock. We kick the field goal. It is going to be good, and we walk away with a close victory against Kentucky, our rival. It has been surprising that we've been able to walk away with wins in 2 very close games, but in our 3rd game of the season, we're playing against an FCS East team, which should be an easy W. In a game like this, with Amari out, Kenny Wiggins and Rich Crawford really wanted to show out and get their stats up. Des Melton, on the other hand, our new starting tight end, has been pretty quiet overall aside from the one big touchdown that he had in the Kentucky game. And again, with that ankle healed up, these runs are so easy to make. And on the very next play, I pull off a Patrick Mahomes-esque pass, throwing it backwards as I'm running past the line of scrimmage, basically turning it into an option play. And we run another option on the very next play. I decided to keep it for myself this time, run it in for an easy touchdown score, giving us a 31-7 lead at the beginning of the 4th quarter. And this game is essentially over. Again, keeping the option for myself. I get great blocks and run it all the way in for another touchdown. And we walk out with the easy W over the FCS East team. I finished with 300 passing yards and 130 rushing yards and 5 total touchdowns. After barely beating Notre Dame and Kentucky and beating an FCS team, we knew we couldn't take any of these teams lightly. We were already the number 9 team in the nation, but we had lost to UCF last season by a touchdown at home. Marshawn Ford, our former superstar tight end, had a bye week and decided to come support the team down in Florida. It was great having him back in the locker room to hype the team up. He wanted revenge for last season, and he mentioned that he wished he could be a part of the team success that we're having this season. Since I was living on my own at this point, I actually got some NIL money coming in. I decided to get a dog. Remember, man, adopt, don't shop. I got a Belgian Malinois named Buddy. He's been taking up a lot of my time, but I've been bringing him to practice too. Coach did get a little pissed when Buddy popped 3 footballs in the last couple of practices, and I can assure you that actually happens pretty regularly. I've also been curious about my future as a football player. Now that we're in the national spotlight a little bit, I've been trying to gauge where I might go in the draft, and if I left after my junior season, what might happen. I was told by a few people in the league circles that right now I'm looking at getting drafted in the 7th round as an athlete versus just a quarterback. They don't see me as a quarterback that can excel in the NFL as a passer, and they think that I should switch to running back or wide receiver. I haven't given it much thought, but based on my athleticism, I think I could play running back, but I don't think I have the route running technique to be a receiver. I talked about it with Marshawn before our game today, and he told me that based on what he's seen in the league so far, I should just go ahead and finish out my senior year. He said that he knows that I have the potential to really increase my draft position as a quarterback if I put together 2 solid years of tape to change the narrative. I didn't need any more motivation to succeed, but what Marshawn said didn't hurt. I've been doubted ever since I started playing football, whether it be my teammates in high school when I was a track athlete or colleges that were willing to recruit me. I've never been for everybody, but that's okay. I just had to know who my people were and who would appreciate what I brought to the table as a leader and as a future professional athlete. I used to ask myself how I could be like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, when instead I should have been asking how I could maximize my abilities to be the best version of myself and whatever that may look like. Here's the thing though, I used to be all about me and what I could do to achieve award-winning status. I mentioned this before, but now it's about the team. If I make everyone around me better, then I'm gonna reap those rewards too. And yeah, it is funny to be talking about award-winning success and making the NFL when I just had 3 interceptions in this game, but I did just have a game-altering touchdown pass, and now with 2 minutes remaining in the game, we're tied 17-17, and we're down at the 1-yard line. On the very next play, on a read option, I keep it for myself, and I take it in for the score to give us a 1-touchdown lead. We got the ball back with about a minute and a half remaining. UCF was not able to score, and so we're just going to give the ball to Jawar Jordan. I don't think Coach trusted me at this point to throw the ball anymore with 3 interceptions already. But with a minute and 25 left, we do pick up another first down. The game is basically over as UCF burned their last time out, but we run a read option, and I'm able to take it in despite having 2 defenders kind of on my back, and we do end up beating UCF, getting our revenge for last season. We had gotten up to number 8 in the rankings against Rutgers, who is surprisingly also undefeated but unranked. Again, this Louisville program has finished the season inside the top 10 once in program history, and I could feel that our squad at least had the potential to at least match that, if not make it to the college football playoffs this season. Both of my parents had come to Louisville for this game against Rutgers to support me. They told me that they had a special surprise waiting for me after the game, but I was really hoping that they hadn't dropped any money or gotten any gifts from me or anything. I really didn't need anything at this point with the NIL money coming in. Anyways, back to the game. At the start of the second quarter, I found Amari Huggins-Bruce on a slant route that almost got him into the end zone when he fell down right at the 1-yard line. I found him on the very next play running the exact same route for a touchdown to regain the lead 7-3. On the next drive, though, I thought Amari Huggins-Bruce had burnt his man one-on-one on the outside on a straight-up go route, but you'll see that he does a double move on this play for no apparent reason when he has his man burnt and it results in an interception. I'm not going to count that one against myself. Luckily, they didn't score off the turnover, and we had a chance to take a 2-score lead with the last drive on the first half. I got loose on a scramble and did something I rarely did. I actually slid, and that is growth right there. On the next play, Chris Bell made an insane Derrick Henry-like play, stiff-arming the defender and taking it for nearly 40 yards, turning a short gain into a huge play. And we were down already in the red zone. We threw a halfback screen to Jawar Jordan, who got tackled immediately, and on 2nd and 12, we ran a play action. On the outside, found Chris Bell once again, who got into the end zone for a touchdown, having a huge couple of plays on that last drive of the first half. Rutgers did answer with a touchdown of their own at the start of the third quarter, and Jawar Jordan was just doing his thing, picking up big chunk yards. Again, a huge sleeper in this upcoming draft with his combination of speed and balance. Same drive, I escaped outside of the pocket and fooled the shallow zone defenders into dropping on me with the threat of the run, and I hit Maurice Turner, our backup running back, for the first down pickup. We finished that drive with a field goal and got back on the field in the fourth after Rutgers couldn't answer. Up 7, we drove down the field with some really great routes from Rich Crawford and then a couple of runs by Jawar Jordan. We finished with another field goal to give us a 2-possession lead after Jawar could not pick up the first down on 3rd and 3. Up by 10 points and with 30 seconds remaining, we're basically just running the clock out. I take a knee, and we come out with a huge victory over, again, an undefeated Rutgers team despite the fact that they were not ranked. Our next week, we played against Temple, who was 1-5 at this point in this season. We were ranked number 5 in the nation at this point. If you really want to know what the surprise was that I got from my parents after the game, I'll tell you what it was. My parents had been contacted by a scout from the University of Washington. It turns out the scout from UW was at the Rutgers game, and he had come with my parents to Louisville to see me play. When I met up with my parents, the scout was with them, and he said that they were preparing to offer me a scholarship, a full scholarship at UW if I entered the transfer portal after my junior year. Now, this was kind of shady because I'm not supposed to be getting contacted from other colleges outside of the transfer portal, and I wasn't given any guarantees, but it was definitely something that I had to at least consider. Straight out of high school, I had always planned to go to UW before the altercation between my teammate and I was published in the local news. But Louisville has also always treated me right, and I guess we'll have to wait until this offseason to see what happens. It wasn't time to panic yet, but being the number 5 team in the nation and being down in the second to a 1-5 team had me upset. We couldn't fold under pressure after accomplishing something that had only happened once before in school history just a week ago. Temple was getting crazy pressure though, and we didn't have any offensive line injuries. A younger, more inexperienced version of myself would probably yell at my offensive line, but let me tell you, that is probably the dumbest thing that you could do as a quarterback. Rich Crawford had a big first down pickup, and with 20 seconds left, we were inside the red zone, and we're trying to salvage the first half with a field goal to end it, but we missed the field goal attempt before the end of the first half, and we were still down 10-7 in the third quarter. Des Melton made a nice grab, and then guess who? Amari Huggins-Bruce, already back from injury, showed up again when we needed him most. This dude is the definition of clutch for this team, giving us a 14-10 lead. On the next drive, I kept it for myself on the read option and took it past the 50-yard line, and I tried to get a little cute and cut in, but the defender was having absolutely none of it. Later, I found Des Melton again for another another big gain off of a great corner route that he ran. Again, an absolutely fantastic route runner, not as athletic as Marshawn Ford, but more of a pure receiver. With a minute left in the first quarter, I scrambled outside the pocket and almost got into the end zone, got down right at the 3-yard line, and another read option play would see me finally squeeze my way into the end zone to give us a bigger lead. Up 21-10 at this point at the end of the third quarter. We had a chance to put this game away. I found Chris Bell for a huge gain down the field for about 25 yards. Coach started to get extremely conservative with play calls, which hurt us. We were running short yardage plays, trying to burn clock way too early in the fourth quarter. On 3rd and 8, we ran a halfback draw, and credit to Jawar Jordan, who picked up a couple of yards, but we still went absolutely nowhere, and Temple scored a touchdown and converted for 2, so we were only up by 3 points, and it was 3rd and 4th with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left, and luckily Jawar Jordan converted for the first down off of the halfback screen. And did I just say that we were playing too conservative? Well, we also didn't want to be too aggressive, and I threw an awful pick on a, let's be honest, a very sloppy comeback route. Ultimately, though, the pick was my fault, and Temple scored a touchdown off of it, putting us down by 4, so we would need a touchdown with a minute remaining. I found Amari, the clutchest dude on this team, to put us into the red zone. With 45 seconds remaining, we had plenty of time, and I tried to assure my guys not to feel like they had to rush themselves. I saw Amari coming wide open on this route, and the cornerback baited me and undercut it for an interception. And that ended the game, man. As the number 5 team in the nation, losing to a 1-5 Temple team, that is a huge heartbreaker. There's nothing you can say to these guys in the locker room right now, but I'm not sure how we're going to come back from this. After blowing a lead last game against Temple in the fourth quarter off of a couple of turnovers that were my fault, morale was definitely a little bit lower since we dropped from the number 5 ranked team in the nation down to number 19. I still didn't know how to respond to the UW scout at the Rutgers game from 2 weeks ago. I was still mulling over the idea of leaving Louisville after this year to go back to UW, but after the loss to Temple, I felt like we could do better. Even if we had just the one loss, and even if we finished within the top 5 or higher, when it was all said and done this season, I know we could have done better, and that's going to eat me up. So the decision to leave to go to UW isn't just black and white, you know? Like, there is emotion to it, and a lot of people would say you shouldn't let emotions affect your decision making, but relationships are important in football, and they gotta be considered. Anyways, after that loss to Temple, our next game came against Houston, and we were down 7-0 to start the second quarter, but Jawar Jordan had an insane 30-yard run, breaking multiple tackles and almost taking it for a touchdown. On 3rd and 9, I tried to keep the drive alive, scrambling out to the right side. Eventually, I was brought down, and it was 4th and 2, but on 4th and 2, I tried to escape outside the pocket again, and this time I stumble, and I end up getting sacked, and we turn the ball over on downs. Now, if you've been enjoying the series, almost 90% of you are not subscribed. Make sure to fix that problem and make sure you get my videos popping up in the future. I have some exciting news coming in the next few weeks, but I can't talk about it quite yet. Anyways, we're going to get back to the game, and at this point, we're driving down the field, and finally, I find Rich Crawford for our first touchdown of the game to tie it 7-7, but Houston does answer with a field goal of their own, so we are still down by 3 points when I find Des Melton on a corner route, and he went down near the 50-yard line. It was nice to actually get an explosive play for once. I felt like I had been really over-reliant on my legs the last couple of weeks. I ended up injuring my shoulder on this run, but I stayed in the game. Jawar ran a power O to the right and juked out 2 defenders to get a TD, but my interception problems hadn't disappeared after the Temple game as I threw another pick at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And if you're squeamish, look away now. I threw another interception on the very next drive, and I ended up getting benched for the rest of the game. We did leave with the win, but I would miss the next game with my shoulder injury. Luckily, we won that game to keep us at 1 loss too, and our next game was against Charlotte. Sometimes you have to assert your dominance over other teams, and running outside the pocket and spinning around a few defenders definitely set the tone in this game. At 7-1, we had a great chance to win the American Conference and potentially have a few All-Americans on offense and defense. We're getting to that point in the season too where we were getting close to losing our seniors again, and it's nice to appreciate them before they leave. Des Melton is done after this year, and he may make it into the NFL. If not on a 53-man roster, he may be on a practice squad. Amari Huggins-Bruce will absolutely be getting drafted, probably in the first few rounds, and some pieces of the O-line might get drafted to play in the NFL or in the XFL. We also have a couple great D linemen who will be gone after this year. The defense is looking like it's going to be really young next season. Of course, I will need to step up even more as the leader for this team. I'll be honest, I never even thought that I would get to this point after my freshman year at Buffalo just flaming out. I thought I would be done. Now that I have the chance to make history at Louisville and potentially get drafted, I'm more motivated though than ever. Again, I don't want to use my legs as a crutch to not pass the football, but we've been running a lot of triple option plays and they've been really successful lately. And you can see why we've been running a lot of option plays and running the football a lot. I'm going to blame that one on the shoulder injury from last game, but I did make up for it by making a couple of pinpoint throws, getting us into the red zone, and then finishing the drive off by running it in for a touchdown. I also need to make sure that I can get Chris Bell to stay for another year. He's one of the unsung heroes on this team at wide receiver. Amari gets all the glory as a speed wideout, and Chris Bell is more like prime Alshon Jeffrey, just a big body with decent route running and really good hands. He's not too flashy. And hopefully getting him the ball more will convince him to stay another year because he definitely could go pro with his measurables and his stats this season. Maurice Turner couldn't get into the end zone, but Jawar Jordan puts the final nail in the coffin of this game, getting another touchdown and giving us a 31-7 lead. Although Charlotte did score another touchdown to keep it respectable, but I broke off a run to get near midfield. I think Coach and I learned to not be as conservative from the Temple game in the fourth quarter, especially when there's still 3 minutes left. On 3rd and 12, I found Amari Huggins-Bruce to pick up a huge first down, putting us basically into the red zone, and Maurice Turner broke off a nice run, getting us another 11 yards. Already in field goal range, even 3 points would end the game, but we continued to be aggressive. I really focused on trying to not turn the ball over when we had this much of an advantage at this point. And on 3rd and 4, I couldn't find anyone open, so I ran out of bounds, but we did pick up the field goal to make it 34-15. Charlotte did not end up scoring, and we just ran the clock out for the rest of the game. With this win, we're likely going to be in the top 10 next week, and we're going to be 8-1 along the way. I look forward to our next game. After winning our last few games, we moved back up to the 10th ranked team in the nation, and who knows, if a couple of things bounce our way, we could be back in the hunt to make the college football playoffs. We've got 2 games left since the American Conference doesn't have a conference championship. After Memphis, our last game is against SMU. Both of these teams are hovering around 500, and they're the last 2 teams in the way of a Louisville team record. I found Amari on our first drive for a 45-yard touchdown, which set the tone early on offense. But it was immediately canceled out by probably my worst play of the season, as I tried to lateral the ball on a read option to Jawar Jordan, and it was intercepted and brought all the way back for a Memphis touchdown. I did make up for it really quickly though, as we got back on Memphis' side of the field, and I found Chris Bell on a slant for a 30-yard pass, and he was almost able to get into the end zone but got knocked out right at the 1-yard line. Later on 2nd and goal, we found Rich Crawford on a short curl route in the end zone for a touchdown, giving us a 13-7 lead as we missed the PAT. Memphis wasn't able to answer, and I found Amari Huggins-Bruce near the 50-yard line right before the end of the first quarter, and early in the second quarter, I almost got into the end zone, but I was brought down by a defensive end, and we settled for a field goal. Midway through the third, I loved Coach's play calls. He did a really good job of keeping the defense off balance with some options and some play action rollouts. Memphis was holding up despite the great play calls, and then on 2nd and 8, I was trying to buy some time scrambling, and I ended up taking a hit as I was going out of bounds that aggravated my shoulder injury, and I needed help getting back up. I was angry with myself for putting myself in a position to take a dumb hit like that in the first place this late in the season, and I had to sit on the bench until I was cleared to return with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You can see that I definitely learned my lesson sliding after picking up the first down, and then later in the drive, it's 3rd and 11, and we run a halfback screen, which was incredibly conservative, which gets blown up, and Memphis takes the lead 20-19, and we run another halfback screen on 1st and 10. This time I use it for myself to get near the 50 with only 30 seconds left. And then who do we trust most when the game is on the line? With 17 seconds left, we find Amari Huggins-Bruce underneath on a drag route to pick up the first down, and then later on 2nd and 10, we find Amari Huggins-Bruce on a corner route to get in the end zone and give us a 5-point lead, and we go for 2, and we hit Amari Huggins-Bruce once more to give us that 7-point lead, and it turned out not to be necessary as Memphis wasn't able to score, and we walk out with a huge comeback W after I come back from the shoulder injury. And our last game of the season is now against SMU, and it is the deciding game to determine whether or not we're going to make the college football playoffs. We're wearing our black and red unis for our night game at home against SMU, and we moved up to number 8 in the standings at this point. On our first drive, though, I have a catastrophic fumble to start the game, and it almost goes out of bounds, but SMU does end up recovering the ball, and they end up getting a field goal out of it. Between all the rivalry games in the final week of the season and conference championships the following week, there's definitely a shot that we can move up to the top 4, especially with only 1 loss. After another conservative 3rd and 10 halfback screen that failed, we fall down 10-0, and now it's time to really lock in even more. Preston Stone, the quarterback for SMU, is looking really good early against our defense, and so this drive at the end of the first is critical. The linebacker's been on the play action fake to Jawar, and I found Chris Bell wide open over the middle for a 20-yard gain to put us on their side of the field finally. The drive is starting to fall apart a little bit, so I run a read option keeper and almost pick up the first down, but on 4th down, I keep the drive alive with my legs, picking up another first down, but we do get into another 3rd and long situation, making it 3rd and 15, and I do find Chris Bell once again for another huge first down pickup. I'm not going to let this drive end without a touchdown, as I find Des Melton for our first touchdown of the game, but SMU answers themselves to give them a 10-point lead again. But we aren't running the clock out before half, as I find Rich Crawford for a nice 20-yard pickup, getting us on SMU's side of the field. We found out Amari Huggins-Bruce for another first down, and then unfortunately on 1st and 10 we take a big sack. Pause. SMU's D is putting a lot of pressure on me. Pause. And I almost take another sack, but I break free and try to make a play down the field, but I don't see anyone, and I end up taking another hit on the sideline, resulting in another fumble that does end up being a turnover with a minute left. Preston Stone ends up making us pay, scoring another touchdown for SMU, but on a last-second Hail Mary, we get in position for a field field goal to make it a 2-score game right before the end of the first half. We ended up with the ball to start the second half, and Jawar breaks off a 23-yard run, almost taking it to the house. Despite the great start, we run an option on 3rd and 3 and get stuffed, and we end up missing the field goal, which absolutely killed our momentum. Our defense came up with a huge stop, getting us the ball back, but then we get into another 3rd and 8. I take a sack, and SMU finally scores a touchdown, taking a 31-10 lead. I do find Amari Huggins-Bruce to get us back over across the 50-yard line, and then I find him again to get us into the red zone. This crowd is stunned at this point, though, and they're completely silent. I escape outside the pocket and use my legs to get us into the end zone, making it a 2-score game again. At this point, with 3 minutes left, we're getting as gritty as we can, fighting for our bowl game and potential college football playoff opportunity. I escaped outside and found Rich Crawford to get us past the 50-yard line, and then I found Des Melton to get us into the red zone again. With 2 minutes remaining, I tried to find our backup tight end Sherman on a short out route, but it got knocked away, and so on 3rd and 6, I escaped outside the pocket and picked up the first down, but I couldn't get into the end zone. Still fighting for our playoff lives, it is do or die at this point. On 4th and goal, we run a play action on the outside. I find Rich Crawford, who holds onto the ball for a touchdown to make it a 7-point game. With a minute remaining, we run an onside kick that gets immediately recovered by SMU, but we still have the opportunity with timeouts to potentially stop them. Our defense light up on 3rd and 6 to stop the run, and Preston Stone dropped a bomb, getting him down to the 1-yard line, and then SMU ended up scoring another touchdown to give them a 2-possession lead. With 30 seconds remaining, I found Sherman, who nearly got into the end zone, and we hustled up to the line of scrimmage to quickly snap the ball, and with 17 seconds remaining, I found Chris Bell on a slant to get us within 1 score again. We tried our luck with another onside kick, and this time it bounced off of an SMU player, but unfortunately it landed out of bounds. And the team was shocked, the fans were shocked, and SMU came up with a huge upset victory over our team, and Preston Stone walked away with a career performance, 290 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and 0 picks. Not to be outdone, I also had a great game myself with 340 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 picks, but it would not be enough. That one fumble at the beginning of the game kind of killed us. And so our dreams of making the college football playoffs are definitely over, but now we just have to see who we're going to play in our bowl game. At the end of my junior season, it was announced that we'd be playing Auburn in our upcoming bowl game. This was an upgrade over our game against North Texas last year. No disrespect to them, but I was happy we got the opportunity to get some reps versus an SEC team. The game didn't exactly start how we had planned, though. Their D was getting crazy penetration, and I got strip sacked, and Auburn recovered it at our 30-yard line. Luckily, they didn't score. What was even crazier, though, was that their DBs were even better. They were clamping Chris Bell and Amari to begin the game on the outside. This forced us to run the ball even more and use screen passes, and we had a lot to figure out offensively, but after getting to Auburn's side of the field, Maurice Turner, our backup running back, ended up stumbling and getting laid out, and he fumbled the ball, and Auburn recovered it again. Going back to the idea of transferring after my junior year, I'd finally made up my mind. The UW scout had reached out to me to enter the transfer portal after our bowl game, and he even told me I should skip out on the bowl to make sure that I was healthy for spring training. I told my coach about the interaction, and he said that he wasn't going to force me to stay, but that we had unfinished business, and if I stayed, he would give me full control over the offense my senior year, allowing me to have input on plays, and even allowing me to call audibles when I wanted to. I also talked with my 2 starting wide receivers next year, Chris Bell and Rich Crawford, about what they thought, and I asked them if they would go with me to UW, and they said that they would, but I also had another option. An agent reached out to me about going to the draft after my junior year, and he told me that he was getting a 4th-round guarantee, but not a guarantee at quarterback. I decided to listen to Marshawn Ford, my former tight end, who mentioned earlier in the season not to enter the draft, and I was going to play my senior college season. And so I finally made my decision. I was going to return to Louisville. Like Coach said, we had unfinished business. I also respected them for always trusting in me, whereas UW pulled their offer my senior year of high school and only had interest in me after seeing my success my junior year. Louisville also gave me some opportunities to make some NIL money, along with the potential to get my number retired. My parents fully supported my decision, and I had sort of established a life in Louisville with my home and my dog, Buddy. Now, did I make the right decision? Let me know in the comments. Somehow we had managed to score 10 points, and we had one last drive before the end of the first half. Surprisingly, our one touchdown came from Maurice Turner, our backup running back, who had that fumble earlier in the game. With 15 seconds left, I was only looking to one dude on a go route, and it was Amari Huggins-Bruce who burned his matchup, and we used our last timeout. And then with 4 seconds remaining, we ran one more play, and I had Amari Huggins-Bruce wide open in the back of the end zone. I didn't pull the trigger, instead taking a sack. And yeah, it was a huge buzzkill, scoring no points when we were on their 5-yard line, but I just rallied the team at halftime and told them we just had to stay the course. Auburn was clearly 6-6 just because of their defense. I trusted our defense to continue to lock down their offense too. We just had to keep doing the little little things right, and if we got rid of the turnovers that we had in the first half, we would definitely win this game, and so that's what we did. Normally, I might be upset with how often coach was calling screen passes, but I definitely understood it in this situation. With 4.5 minutes remaining in the game, pay close attention to how we were running the ball. We're doing a lot of quarterback scrambles and rollouts and a lot of read options and just straight up halfback runs to burn as much clock as possible. And I've mentioned this before, but winning a bowl game would be huge for the recruiting cycle. It continues to get us great players on the roster, and even though it's not going to matter much my senior season, what freshmen look like, it's going to help the program long term. And I feel like the fact that I didn't enter the transfer portal is indicative of the loyalty I have towards Louisville. Anyways, on 3rd and 15, we get right down to the 1-yard line off of a pass to Sherman, and we end up taking the field goal, but Auburn comes back and finally scores their first touchdown of the game. But with a minute and a half remaining, all we need to do is get one more first down, and so we're running Jordan significantly, and coach went back to the read option again, isolating the edge defender, and I kept it for myself, picking up the first down, and we would end up beating Auburn 13-10. A very low-scoring game, but it was great to pick up our second bowl win with me on the team, and the first time that I actually get to start for the last possession of the game versus being injured, like in our game versus North Texas. But this is huge for the program nonetheless, and I'm excited to see what my senior year has in store. Keep watching though, because now we're going to go through the season stats for our offense and defense, and then after that we're going to look at how our former teammates are doing in the NFL. All right, so starting out with my stats, I ended up winning the Walter Camp Award, finishing with 22 touchdown passes and 14 interceptions and nearly 3,000 passing yards, and then 1,600 rushing yards, averaging almost 9 yards per carry and 16 rushing touchdowns. And Jordan had a great season rushing the ball as well, with nearly 200 carries, almost 900 rushing yards, and then 5 rushing touchdowns. And Maurice Turner didn't get that much of an opportunity, but as a wide receiver, Amari Huggins-Bruce, 53 catches for 860 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was the #1 option. Rich Crawford, as a freshman, putting up great numbers. And then Chris Bell had a really solid season too, but not as many touchdowns as I had expected from him. And Des Melton did an okay job, getting 23 catches in total for nearly 400 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Defensively, we have 2 junior star coverage linebackers in Cameron Wilson and TJ Quinn, both making All-Americans. And Cameron Wilson actually won the Bednarik and the Butkus Award this year, and he had 2 sacks along with 4 interceptions. When the draft came around, it was no surprise that Amari Huggins-Bruce was the first Louisville player off the board, getting picked in the 2nd round, and then Des Melton got picked in the 4th round, and then Tamarcus Simpson, a linebacker safety hybrid out of USF who frequently gave me issues, ended up getting drafted in the 1st round. Amari Huggins-Bruce comes out of the draft as an 81 overall, and then Des Melton comes out as a 71 overall. Jordan also ended up getting drafted to the Buccaneers, and D. Wiggins and LJ Henderson are now both on the Cardinals. And then lastly, Marshawn Ford finished his first season for the Cowboys. After finishing 2nd in the Heisman and deciding to return to Louisville, I expected maybe a little bit more hype or fanfare about my decision to return for my senior season, but I wasn't expecting to not even be the first team quarterback for our conference. Looking at the receivers, Chris Bell's our wide receiver 1, and Rich Crawford, the sophomore, is our number 2. At tight end, we have Carson Gay and Kenny Wiggins, our other sophomore wide receiver that's 6'6". Again, if you missed the last video, it was great that our bowl game came against Auburn, an SEC team, because we'd face our first test of the season in the opening week in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game against Tennessee. We started the season where we had left off my junior year at the number 15 team, and 2 key changes to the offense are that Amari Huggins-Bruce obviously was drafted by the Jets, and coaches allowed me to take full control over the offense, changing plays or routes at the line based off of what I'm seeing from the defense. It was great to feel that level of trust to run the offense compared to when I was a freshman or even my senior year of high school. We struggled to score in the first quarter against Tennessee's defense, and they were playing very physically, picking up a face mask, and then once we got into the red zone, our fumbling problem with our backup running back showed up again, but this time it was Wilson who's our backup running back, as Maurice Turner has taken the starting spot. But we got the ball back really quickly, and I hit Chris Bell on a quick in, and he took it the rest of the way, breaking off 1 tackle and scoring our first touchdown of the season. I was looking slippery on this play. 2 or 3 defenders just slid off of me, and I picked up another first down. During my freshman and sophomore season, I hated running the ball because I wanted to be like Patrick Mahomes, picking apart defenses with my arm. But my junior year, I realized that I was only hurting my team by not using my legs. I ended up running for 1,500 yards in my junior season, averaging over 100 yards per game, and if it ain't broke, then I wasn't going to try and fix it. With 40 seconds left, we had a shot to take a 2-possession lead over Tennessee, and I put way too much touch on this ball, allowing the DB to come in and pick it off in the back of the end zone, and I was definitely looking a little rusty as a passer. Like I said a second ago though, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I got past the safety, taking it 60 yards for the touchdown to get us back within 4 points. But Tennessee scored another touchdown, putting us down by 11 points, and we had to drive down the field with only 3 minutes remaining, and on 4th and goal, Wilson took it into the end zone, making up for his fumble earlier in the game. And the defense defense showed up again, getting another huge stop, getting us the ball back with a minute remaining. I ran outside the pocket and picked up the first down and ran out of bounds to stop the clock at 46 seconds left. We had no timeouts left, but I found Carson Gay over the top with a nice touch pass, and we ended up getting a crazy last-second win in the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Bowl versus Tennessee. There were definitely some skeptics after that victory over Tennessee, especially because they were an unranked team, so we only moved up 2 spots in the rankings, but on the first play of the game versus our next opponent, I took it 75 yards to the house for our first touchdown of the game. Tennessee is obviously really different from an FBS team, but we needed to show that we could blow out unranked teams, and that's what our goal was for this game. We had a 30-point spread before the game, and we wanted to see if we could beat it. Obviously, there's no gambling allowed for college players or professional players, but I take it in for our second touchdown of the game on the read option keeper. Now, Rich Crawford made a huge leap in his sophomore year already. I can already tell through 2 games that he is a force to be reckoned with as he takes the jet sweep all the way for the touchdown. I have not seen a single receiver do that on our team. One thing I cannot stand, especially against clearly inferior teams, is showboating, but we were doing whatever we wanted. John Wilson gets in for another touchdown, and it's 28-7 at this point. When I run outside the pocket and let 2 defenders fly out of bounds before I dive into the end zone for another score to take a 4-touchdown lead before half. I finished the game with 6 total touchdowns, 7 carries for 120 yards, and 250 passing yards, but we only ended up winning by 30 points, which basically was a push. We did not beat the spread because that FCS team scored 2 touchdowns late and we won 51-21. And our next game would be the most important of the season so far, playing against our rivals Kentucky. Doesn't matter if they're 1-1 and we're 2-0 and we're the number 10 team in the nation. In any rivalry game, anything can happen. You always got to take it seriously. And I was throwing some dangerous passes to start the game. Coach drew up a great read option play though as I took it in the end zone for our first score of the game, but Kentucky answered right back. And last year when we beat Kentucky, we barely squeaked out a game-winning field goal. This year, obviously, expectations are much higher for this squad, and as a result, we need to show how much we've improved. In the first quarter, offensively, we were getting chunk play after chunk play. First on this read option pitch out to Maurice Turner, who took it for 24 yards, and then on the next play, I found our new star receiver, Rich Crawford, on a slant, and he did the rest of the work, picking up the first down, and on the following play, I threw another scary pass, almost getting intercepted by the linebacker, and it should have been a return for a pick 6. But on 3rd and 5, I found our tight end, Carson Gay, in the flats for another first down pickup, and then on the goal line, we ran a read option, and Kentucky was definitely ready for this time, and we lost 5 yards. But on 3rd and goal, Amari Huggins-Bruce's favorite route, the corner route, we found Rich Crawford for the touchdown to regain the lead 14-7. And Kentucky couldn't answer, and we were already moving down the field, getting into the red zone with 3 minutes left in the second quarter. Maurice Turner did a great job breaking a few tackles on a halfback screen, and then we found none other than Rich Crawford for his second touchdown of the game off of his 5th catch. Kentucky scored 1 more field goal, but we were trying to put a dagger in them before the end of the first half. We were throwing deep balls over the middle to Carson Gay, but on the second attempt, the safety undercut the route and picked us off before the end of the first half. Kentucky came out and scored a field goal on their first drive of the half, and finally we got Chris Bell his first touch of the game on a curl route, picking up 10 yards, and then on 3rd and 5, we ran it with Maurice Turner, who got blown up for a 4-yard loss, and then we had to punt the ball away. Luckily, Kentucky couldn't score, but they were playing great defense, but I made an insane play on 2nd and 10, running to my left and throwing it 60 yards downfield to Rich Crawford, who caught it in the red zone. And then on 1st and goal, I was waiting for Carson Gay to get open on the corner route, but he was not really following through with his route, so I took it into the end zone myself for another touchdown, and we were only up by 8 points after Kentucky scored on their next drive. To start the 4th quarter, Coach handed the entire offense off to me, allowing me to call every play. He recognized that nothing we were doing in the second half was really working, and we were getting mostly lucky off of big plays with my legs. I found our backup tight end and wide receiver Kenny Wiggins for a big gain, and then I found none other than the man, Rich Crawford, for his 3rd touchdown. All 3 of my touchdown passes have gone to Rich Crawford at this point. You'd think we'd have easily secured the win after that last touchdown, but Kentucky scored on their next drive, and then they got an onside and scored another TD. My 40-yard carry with 40 seconds left, though, iced the game, and we walked out with a big victory over our state rivals, and we are 3-0 on the season. Let me know if you're excited to see the rest of my senior year. Also, a quick look at the Heisman race. I'm at the number 4 spot along only halfbacks. I'll see you in the next video. After winning our first 3 games, we were ranked 7th in the nation heading into our Saturday afternoon game against UCF. UCF had beat us my sophomore year, and last year we won 31-17 after scoring a late touchdown to close the game out. But so far this season, I was averaging 200 passing yards along with 150 rushing yards per game. But the only flaw in my game was that I was still struggling with turning the ball over, mostly off of interceptions. A minute and a half into the game, I scored my first touchdown, running it into the end zone for 20 yards. One thing I will say is that my offensive line has really improved this year. Other teams are rarely getting pressure, and I attribute that to my relationship with my O-lineman. The line was struggling during my junior year, so they started a tradition of having a film night on Wednesdays where they'd also play cards or play some video games and party a little bit. Once I started coming to these get-togethers, I started to become close friends with them, and I knew for a fact that if the O-line liked their quarterback and knows their quarterback, they're probably going to block even better for them to try and keep them clean in the pocket. Why am I telling you this? Well, I got my entire offensive line watches, and I got each of them a gaming PC too. You can never go wrong with showing the dudes that protect you a little bit some appreciation. And I benefit a lot from the NIL money just because I play quarterback, but these linemen have just as much of an important role on the team, and they deserve recognition as well. I was making plays left and right trying to get a 2-possession lead, but when I scrambled outside the pocket, I ended up fumbling, giving UCF a chance to take a 3-point lead with a touchdown drive themselves. With a minute left before halftime, we had one more chance to take the lead, and I found our wide receiver tight end hybrid, Kenny Wiggins, for a big gain over the middle, splitting the safeties apart. We got stopped on 3rd down, but I begged coach to go for it, and I found Carson Gay for the 1st down pickup to keep our chance of getting a touchdown going. But UCF's defense was getting consistent pressure on the last couple of plays. They ended up getting a sack on 2nd down, and then on 3rd and 8, they got pressure once again, forcing a bad pass that was incomplete, so we had to settle for a field goal before the end of the half. UCF came out and scored a touchdown to start the second half, and we had to answer. Coach did a great job of play calling by running a few times to open up the deep shot on play action, which ended up working perfectly as we found Chris Bell wide open for the touchdown to tie the game. It was the 4th quarter, and UCF had scored again, taking a 6-point lead but missing the PAT when we found Rich Crawford, our old reliable wide receiver. Well, he's not really old, he's actually younger than Chris Bell, but he ended up picking up a big 1st down. I ended up getting sacked, which made it 3rd and 16, and I escaped outside the pocket, got some blocks from my wide receiver, shifted a couple of safeties, got into the end zone for the touchdown to take a 1-point lead with a minute and a half remaining. But we were not in the clear yet. UCF just needed a field goal to win because we only had a 1-point lead, and they ended up getting down to our 30-yard line, and on 3rd and 5, the quarterback ended up getting sacked. For a loss, they tried to kick the field goal, they missed it, and we ended up getting a very close win against UCF, who could have given us our first loss of the season. And so because the game was so close, we didn't go up in the rankings. We were still ranked 7th against Cincinnati, who was 1-3 at this point. And even though Cincy was 1-3, I started the game off shaky, throwing an interception, trying to find Elijah Downing in the back of the end zone, and they returned it up to the 20-yard line. Getting back to the weekly get-togethers with the offensive linemen, after I started going, I decided to host a team-wide monthly hangout at my house. Believe it or not, you can get a really nice house in Louisville, Kentucky with the amount of money that I was making. And I wasn't making Shadur Sanders or Caleb Williams type of money, but I'll say that I was making enough to afford $1 million home with a pool, and I wanted everyone on the team bought into our goal of winning the Natty this year. We needed to go undefeated, which would mean we'd have to maintain focus throughout the entire season, and maintaining that focus requires that every single player on the roster, from the long snapper to our star linebacker, has to be locked in every single play of every game. My goal was to treat the walk-ons and the fringe roster players the best to keep their morale up, get to know them, and help them progress. And like I mentioned my junior year, we got some new freshmen on the team after our bowl win against Auburn and our successful top 25 finish, and these guys weren't going to see the field most likely, but if they did, they needed to be ready to contribute immediately. And there was no better example of a player contributing immediately than Rich Crawford. He was consistently my #1 target, and despite being a sophomore, he was consistently open nearly every single play when they were not double teaming him. In retrospect, I do have to give a hats off to the defense, because normally our offense is scoring 40 points per game, but in this game, Cincinnati was doing a pretty good job of stopping us. Chris Bell got a nice catch off of a corner route to get us into the red zone, and then on 3rd and 7, we had a really conservative halfback screen call that got blown up immediately, and we had to settle for a field goal and take a 10-point lead. And I just wanted to take a quick second to admire this beautiful pass to Kenny Wiggins, which I absolutely would not have thrown in my junior, sophomore, or freshman years, but it ended up being called back off of holding anyways. Usually a holding penalty to start a drive is a death sentence, but we found Carson Gay on 1st down, making it a much shorter 2nd down conversion to Elijah Downing. And then once again, we ran a screen on 3rd and long, and it got blown up. Wilson picked up a couple of yards, but on 4th and 6, we faked a punt. We picked up the 1st down, and then I found Chris Bell on a curl route to get us inside the red zone. Once again, Cincinnati's D held us to a 3rd down, and we tried to convert by finding Maurice Turner, our running back, but he dropped the ball, and we still ended up winning the game 20-7. And again, a big shout out to our defense who held Cincinnati to just 7 points. After the game, I had fallen a little bit in the Heisman standings as Noah Fafita had moved up to #4, and I had fallen down to the #5 spot. Now, winning the Heisman wasn't the end-all be-all for me. I ultimately wanted to win a national championship with our team, but it would be a nice cherry on top to finish this season out and a good recognition of the value I brought to the team. And speaking of the value I brought to the team, we had moved up to the #6 spot, but then I had a horrible pitch out on an option play that Manning intercepted and returned for a fumble 6. At one of the offensive lineman meetups, I met this girl named Mia, and no, she wasn't built like an offensive lineman. We started hanging out a bunch, and eventually we started dating, and one thing that I was always wary of was dating any woman who knew that I was a college quarterback, because it was so difficult to read their intentions and if they actually liked me or if they just liked what I could give them. So Mia was cool, but I definitely didn't fully trust her yet. And then at this point in the game, we had 80 rushing yards and over 50 passing yards, but no points to show for it. I found Chris Bell at the 1 yard line. A Memphis safety made an incredible diving tip to knock the ball away on 2nd and goal. And then on 3rd and goal, finally Maurice Turner got into the end zone to tie the game 7-7. On our next drive, we started from our own 5 yard line. I found Rich Crawford to start us off. And at the start of the second quarter, we were tied 7-7, and it reminded me of our mantra to leave no doubt, and being tied with a 3-3 team to start the second quarter was definitely not that. Of course, that would mean that we would need to pick up our offense. Last game, we finished with only 20 points on the board versus a 1-3 team, and Memphis wasn't that much better. I escaped outside the pocket and got us down to the 1, but I went down with a shoulder injury that took me out for the entire second half, and then I ended up returning for the second half after getting a cortisone injection and doing some stretches. They wanted me to get some x-rays done to be safe, but I knew that I had to return to the game with our team only up by 3 to start the second half. In just 2 plays, I got us from our own 20 down to Memphis's 5 yard line, with Kenny Wiggins taking a 15 yard pass and turning it into 50 yards instead. Memphis didn't make it easy, but on 3rd and goal, I ended up finding our backup wide receiver, Davidson, on a slant for the touchdown. Memphis turned the ball over late in the 3rd, giving us great field position to start off our drive, and I found Rich Crawford on a double move post route to split the defense down the middle for another touchdown to give us a 31-14 lead. We felt pretty secure with a 17-point lead, but on 3rd and 6, I wanted to convert the first down, and I got absolutely drilled by a linebacker. The back of my head got launched into the turf, but I did come in for the final QB kneel, and we narrowly won 31-28. I wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's watched this series so far. We have just half the season left of my senior year, and of course my goal is to make the national championship game. Sit back, relax, and get ready for the most important 6-game stretch of my career at Louisville. I started off my game against South Florida reminding them who the top dog in the conference was. We've had issues playing USF in the past, but those problems are going to stay in the past this year. As my former teammate Marshawn Ford once said, just put it on tape, and that's exactly what I did, displaying the accuracy and touch I developed over my last 4 years in college. To end the first, I escaped right and hit my number 1 wideout, Rich Crawford, who pulled it in past midfield. The USF defense held strong, though. Once we got past the 15, admittedly, I threw a dangerous pass that could have been a pick 6. Our kicker ended up missing the field goal. We started our next drive from the 5, and coach was conservative with the play calls, running it a few times with no success from Maurice Turner. South Florida was sitting in man coverage, so I thought I might as well make them pay with my legs. I sent my receivers deep, and I ran it up the field to keep the chains moving. USF didn't want to play zone against us because they knew I would obliterate it, but they also were learning that they couldn't play man against me either because I'd run circles around their front 7. Ever since Tamarcus Simpson had been drafted, I didn't really have to worry about any ball-hawking, athletic box safeties out of USF either. When we got down to the red zone, our offense tightened up real quick. They had the defense staring at me whether they were in man or zone, ready to leave their assignment if I tried scrambling. So I needed my receivers to make plays for me. Carson Gay got clamped on 2 straight plays, and given the reads I was making pre-snap, I didn't have a great option for a throw. Rich Crawford wasn't getting isolation looks like I told coach that I wanted. We ended up settling for a field goal before half, and we were tied with USF in the 3rd. I ran downfield, which was our only form of offense that seemed to be working when we could operate in space. I took us past the 50, and I still struggled with sliding it or going out of bounds, taking some unnecessary hits. The very next play, I made up for it though, finding my tight end, Gay, wide open for the touchdown. Gay and Wiggins were seemingly the only dudes who could get open. Anytime I looked for Bell or Crawford, they were blanketed in the second half. I kept hitting Gay, but eventually I tried my luck on the outside with a one-on-one ball, and USF's defense picked me off. Thank the Lord for our defense though, they were beating the brakes off the USF offense series after series. TJ Quinn and Cameron Wilson, our 2 All-American linebackers, were killing it as usual. Like I preached though, and like I mentioned earlier, sometimes I got a slide, and I paid the price on this possession trying to pick up the first down. We've been lacking some creativity in the red zone this game, but coach drew up a great triple option play that I pitched out to Elijah Downing for the easy conversion. We followed that up the next play with a scramble by me. Again, gotta get down before getting hit. And then I found Chris Bell, who'd been having a tough game for the touchdown, to take a 2-score lead. After that, seemingly everything opened up offensively. The following drive, I found Rich Crawford on the outside, who beat his man one-on-one for the touchdown, and we rolled to the win. It was tied at half, but we responded well to the pressure playing at home. Again, everyone was bought in, and nobody had any doubt we would win against anybody we played. I had another standard performance for me this season, putting up 250 passing yards and 180 rushing yards on the way to the win with 4 total touchdowns. Our next game was marked on my calendar ever since last year. If you'll remember, last year we lost in a shootout to SMU and Preston Stone. Stone was garnering significant draft hype, and he had a near perfect performance against us last year. I know the D he wanted some revenge, and so did I, since that was our first loss of the season at that point. I also felt slighted because Stone was projected higher than me in the draft, and it was time to put on a complete display for any NFL scout that might be in the audience. After finishing the first half of the season undefeated, our head coach put together a team dinner to celebrate what we had accomplished at this point, but also to remind us not to lose focus. We couldn't discount a team, a player, or a coach if we wanted to stay undefeated. Al-Jay Henderson came to our game against SMU to support. I hadn't seen him since leaving Buffalo after my freshman year. He wanted to congratulate me on what I'd accomplished with the Louisville team. He said he was surprised to see how I'd turned out individually as a player and as a person after a terrible year at Buffalo that nearly led me to quit playing altogether. Al-Jay went on to say that his team, the Cardinals, were considering drafting me, but he said that they might want to play me at wide receiver or as a running back. I told Al-Jay respectfully that I was only interested in quarterback and he was a way better running back than me. Also, at this point in the season, I had begun speaking with an agent about the draft. My agent advised me that I should consider switching positions. He said that there were several players in the past who had converted from quarterback to have success in the league, like Julian Edelman, Logan Thomas, etc. He told me that I should look at Fields. He said Fields would be better off as a running back, and I told my agent that if he floated that idea of playing a different position again, that he'd have to find someone else to represent, because I was having my best season at quarterback yet, and I was competing for the Heisman and a college football playoff berth. Getting back to the game at hand, of course the win was the most important thing, but I also wanted to outclass Stone as a passer. Last year we both had near flawless performances, but this year I had been preparing all season for decisively winning this game at SMU. We found some wiggle room with a 4-point lead, driving the ball down to SMU's 20. I found Crawford for the first down pickup, and then SMU's defense walled up at the goal line. They were playing heavy contain and drop back coverage, and I forced a ball into a tight window and it got intercepted for the second pick of the game by me. I was furious with myself on the sideline. I couldn't believe I had talked all year about this game, and I was actively hurting my team. I mentally decided not to worry anymore about the SMU's offense and instead completely paid attention to trying to trust my teammates. That turned out to be the turning point in the game as the defense stepped up and got a huge stop, and we drove the ball down and took an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter. The game was far from over though. SMU scored a touchdown and we got the ball back with 2 minutes left. I knew if we ran Turner, we would be punting it away early, so I told coach that I'm going to go all out passing, treating this drive like any other, and SMU is going to have to guard the whole field and not just a run up the middle. He signed off on the idea and it paid dividends. We ended up scoring a touchdown. SMU answered back once again, but they couldn't get the onside kick, and we ran the clock out and took the win 35-30. It was definitely closer than I'd hoped against a 4-3 team, but we got revenge for last season, and aside from the 2 picks, I had a solid game, passing for over 300 yards and running it for 100 along with 4 more touchdowns. As James Harden said once, I am a system. I moved up to the number 2 spot for the Heisman, and the close win did hurt our chances of rising up the top 25, and we ended up staying at the number 7 spot for our game against Temple. If you've been watching my career for a while, you'd know that Temple has beaten us when we were ranked in the past. It's like the committee lined up all of our toughest matchups over my first 2 years at Louisville and put them in back-to-back games for my senior season. I ended the first quarter getting baited into a dumb pick, trying to find my receiver on a post route, but luckily my defense bailed me out, holding them to 0 points after the turnover. For being a 2-6 bottom-tier D1 team, Temple always had a uniquely challenging defense for me. I felt like every ball I was throwing was in a tight window with defenders bracketing my receivers. My one big play was to Downing to get us in the red zone, and eventually I found my tight end, Gay, for the touchdown to take the lead. The defense was doing their job, consistently stonewalling Temple's offense, and now it was my turn to relieve some of the pressure for them. Gay was getting a lot of my targets lately. He was a mismatch for so many secondaries that it was surprising that he wasn't projected to be drafted, but Des Melton was last season. I felt like Gay was the second best tight end I had played with aside from Marshawn Ford. Right before the end of the first half, I made a ridiculous play, rolling to my left, turning around, setting my feet, and throwing a dime to Bell in the back of the end zone for my second touchdown. In the second half, we made quick work getting to Temple's red zone, only for me to get sacked on second down and then again on third down to put us outside of field goal range, killing a scoring drive. It was really easy to get frustrated with these types of plays because we knew that the College Football Playoff Committee was looking at every team through a microscope, trying to find any bad wins or weaknesses to remove a team from contending for the national championship. And being up 14-6 looked like a bad win, but coach calmed the team down. We got back into a rhythm offensively, running the ball. We ran an option that got big yards, and then we ran another that I kept for myself, and the blocks lined up perfectly as I weaved through traffic to take it 50 yards for the score. In the fourth and up 8 points, we needed a 3rd and 14 conversion to get back into field goal range, but the ball got tipped away and we had to punt. Temple responded with a touchdown, and all of a sudden ESPN was playing our game for a top 10 upset watch. We had the ball with 3 minutes left in the game, and I was asked to burn those final minutes like I did for the most part last game. I told coach again, let the offense play naturally. Let's not run it up the middle every play. I found Bell wide open in the zone defense, and he did the rest of the work, going down right at Temple's 1-yard line. Turner scored immediately, and Temple had no timeouts remaining. You can never count out the Temple Owls, though. They made it a game, scoring another touchdown, but we got the ball back with a 2-point lead, and since Temple had no timeouts, we got another close call W. I got player of the game honors despite a below average game, and we were staring down the end of my college career. Stick around for the end of the episode to see what school record I break and whether or not I win the Heisman and if we make the national championship game. There are 3 games left in the season, and I'm currently ranked 2nd in the Heisman standings. I started the first of our last 3 games playing against Houston. I was in a 2-man race for the Heisman at this point, and it was between me, a scrambling quarterback getting nearly 1.5K rushing yards, and a pure passer named Noah Fafita out of Arizona. I couldn't get too wrapped up in the Heisman, though. The Heisman was a side quest to the main goal of getting to the national championship game. Even though Houston was unranked, they were a solid 7-2 team. All the experiences that I've had over the course of my career kept me on my toes this season and against any matchup. Getting sloppy on a few drives on offense can be devastating, and it can derail your whole year. I had to maintain a Kobe-like focus on that goal to the point of it becoming an obsession. One thing that people don't consider about college players, though, is that all the time that you spend traveling outside of actually playing the game each week. This weekend, I got to spend some time with my teammates exploring Houston. Each NFL city I went to at this point, I was imagining what it would be like to be the quarterback of that team. So I tried it out for Houston, but it didn't really make sense because they had CJ Stroud, who was going crazy at quarterback and in contention for the MVP. And some fans would say that I should be practicing more because we're tied with an unranked Houston team, and I would never hear the end of it if we lost this game. But we got bailed out on 4th and inches when I got strip sacked, but it ended up being an offsides penalty. We got a new set of downs, and with my next opportunity on 1st and goal, I rolled out and I found Carson Gay, who has been lighting it up the last few weeks. Gay's been consistently a weapon for me, and Chris Bell has shown some flashes after having a great junior season, but my number 1 guy was Rich Crawford, and he had dropped off in production after a great first half of the season. If we were going to win versus any top 5 team right now, I would need him back as my definitive wide receiver 1. After throwing the ball down the field vertically so much, it really opened up running lanes for me. Like I've said before, teams cannot be playing man defense against me. I kept it on a read option, and I took it for a touchdown, juking out a few DBs on the way. We had a comfortable 2-score lead nearing the 4th quarter, but we wanted more separation, and we needed a blowout to increase our odds of moving up in the top 25 rankings, so we were really pushing ourselves to continue scoring. I took a hit late in the 3rd quarter, and I definitely felt it, and then on the following play, I got pressured and pushed out of the pocket, and instead of sliding, I took another hit, and I was down on the ground. I tried getting back up, but I couldn't put any pressure on my ankle. I was about to cry. I thought I would be out for the rest of the season. I thought our hopes of making the national championship, or my hopes of winning the Heisman, were just over. I had to be helped off the field by my teammates. I couldn't finish the rest of the game, but we did squeak out the win narrowly. I was diagnosed with a high ankle sprain, which can be a to come back from. The timeline is usually 4 to 6 weeks, but I told coach that I was playing in our last 2 games, no matter what. I just couldn't be running the ball nearly as much as if I wanted to recover a little bit. He didn't want me to injure myself any further because I would be able to be back in time for our postseason normally. I assured him that I would try to keep from scrambling as much as I could these last 2 games, and that gave me the opportunity to add more of my pure passing on tape. For all the scouts and agents who doubted my abilities, this would be like my flu game. Except in my first game without the ability to run much, I struggled a bit to adjust. I was so used to bailing out of the pocket anytime I had pressure that it was weird for me to have to throw the ball away against Charlotte. Their defense had prepped all week for my backup, expecting me to definitely be out this game, but in the 2nd quarter, I made my first big mistake as a pure pocket passer, underthrowing the out route and getting picked off by a Charlotte DB. I made up for it though with a touchdown throw to Elijah Downing before the end of the first half to put some more distance between us and Charlotte. In the second half, we played much more of a pro-style offense and relied more on the running game to get us home. Maurice Turner broke one from our 35-yard line and took it to the house, and then on the following possession, we ran a fake read option that I ended up handing off to Walters for another score, and we walked away with an easy W. After the win, we hadn't moved up from the 5 spot in the standings, but my teammates told me how much they appreciated me battling out there and fighting through pain to be on the field with them. I had a chance to look at Noah Fafita's stats, and he was having an insane season with 54 passing touchdowns and only 2 interceptions, and we actually moved down from the 5 spot down to the 6 spot after our win versus Charlotte. We still had an outside shot of making it to the national championship game if Oregon and Arizona played against each other in the Pac-12 championship, and if Syracuse and Clemson played against each other in the ACC championship game. Our last game of the season was against Rutgers, and we were still ranked 5th in the college football playoff standings. We would need a lot of dominoes to fall our way. Aside from winning and playing well this week, there wasn't a championship game in our American conference, so we wouldn't get an extra game to prove ourselves. We need teams to beat each other in the Big 5 Conference Championship week next week if we're going to make the Natty. Since this was our last opportunity to showcase what we brought to the table, we were going to go all out against Rutgers. I was also trying to keep the Heisman Trophy away from Noah Fifita, so I needed a good game personally too. My ankle had recovered a bit since the previous week, and I didn't practice all week either, but I was definitely still feeling pain if I made any sudden movements or started sprinting. I had PT staff make sure I was as numbed up as I could be, and I wasn't too worried about any long-term risks of playing on a bad ankle. I knew that if I made it through this game in one piece, we'd at least have a couple of weeks until our bowl game, depending on which one we were in. If we were in the national title game, then of course, I'd have a lot of time to rest beforehand. Rutgers clearly didn't read the scouting report before the game though. Any slight movement I made outside the pocket pulled the defenders toward me, and I was very willing to keep my eyes downfield and throw it instead of taking a massive hit. Of course, sometimes sacks are unavoidable, but I found Wells for a touchdown in the back right corner to get us to 14 before the end of the first quarter. Like I said though, we're piling it on this game and we're not using the brakes even once. We scored 2 more quick touchdowns, passing the ball down the field to get up to 28 points in the first half. And in the second half, it was more of the same. It didn't matter that Rutgers only had 7 points. We were playing against ourselves all day long. I had 450 passing yards to start the fourth quarter, which might have been a career high for me. With 3 minutes left in the game, I didn't even realize that scoring my next touchdown would break the Louisville passing touchdowns record held by Teddy Bridgewater. I was surprised with how much I used my legs that I had the all-time single-season records for passing touchdowns out of all the historical Cardinals quarterbacks. I ended up finishing the game with a Heisman-like stat line of 35 for 43 for 480 passing yards and 6 touchdowns. After going undefeated, of course we won the American Conference, and individually I ended up finishing 6th for the Maxwell Award, which I thought was kind of crazy. Noah Fifita ended up winning the award, but I was super happy to win the Walter Camp Award again, which factored in my versatility as a runner. The Heisman votes came out, and I was shocked to have been invited out to New York City to lose the award by a total of 66 points. But I guess all I can do now is tip my hat and congratulate Noah Fifita, who also had a great season. Now that the award season was over, it was time to see our bowl game. Well, it's time for the moment of truth. After Rivalry Week in the Power 5 Conference Championships, we finished as the 4th-ranked team. Unfortunately, there is no college football playoffs for Road to Glory, so we have a Fiesta Bowl showdown against Oregon. But stay to find out how everyone performs. This would be my last college game. After not making the national championship, every team in our position would want to prove that they should have been there. I had the added chip on my shoulder of finishing 2nd in the Heisman and being a 3rd-round projected draft pick. I felt like I was finishing as the runner-up for basically everything. So with our perfect season on the line, I wanted to dismiss any doubt about which team should have been in the national championship game. And on the second play of the game, I did just that. I housed a 66-yard run while breaking a DB's ankles. Oregon, of course, answered right back. We knew from our preparation the last 2 weeks that Oregon had an elite group of athletes in the secondary and that their defense was great at forcing turnovers. So Coach and I worked on the first 15 play script for days trying to get Oregon off balance, but who would have expected that touchdown run to start the game? Basically, my point was we felt that we had to be perfect on offense to win this game. Gay has been money for us down the stretch, and he made a massive catch on 3rd down. We were methodically working our way down the field using the run game and a lot of short pass concepts, which was unusual for how we finished the last few weeks of the season, but I think it made sense in terms of the caliber of competition we were playing against. Looking back at my career, I don't think I would have changed a thing about it. If you look back at where I started, I was an egomaniac and I was an untalented sprinter playing quarterback at the high school level, and I only got scholarship offers because of my speed. I was a terrible teammate to Gio, my old wide receiver in high school, stealing his girlfriend. I kind of deserved to have my UW offer pulled, and in retrospect, everything led up to me being where I am today. I don't think I'd even be in consideration for the Heisman or be a part of an undefeated team if not for me facing adversity earlier in my career and my early struggles in New York my freshman season. We had a monumental program win against Ohio State, but when it was all said and done, I almost hung up my cleats for good after that year. Louisville is the school that saved me and turned my career around, along with players like D. Wiggins, Marshawn Ford, Amari Huggins-Bruce, Tyler Hudson, Jawar Jordan, Des Melton, and I can go on and on. I got the opportunity to play alongside so many current and future NFL players. I really should be grateful that I'm even being considered a draft pick in the 3rd round. When I started out, my fans had even turned on me my freshman year, thinking I wasn't good enough to play quarterback. You already know a lot of people suggested I switch positions to wide receiver or to running back, but we got the job done this season playing quarterback and breaking the all-time single-season passing touchdowns record for Louisville. Was my career perfect? No, but it was real. And just for a second, hold on, remember that my career isn't over. Really, it's just beginning. This final game is going to have lasting impressions on NFL scouts, even if it's not playing for the Natty. After our last drive ended with a missed field goal, and this drive almost ended from a fumble, we desperately needed some points on the board before half. I trusted my guy Chris Bell to win one-on-one, and he held on to it for our second score. Oregon scored again in 2 plays, and so we were back on the field with 30 seconds left. Coach was comfortable with going into halftime tied at 14. It made sense on paper. We hadn't scored any of our touchdowns by moving the ball quickly down the field, but I felt like we could run a really great 2-minute drill, and I could tell Oregon wasn't expecting it. I found my X factor Wiggins for a huge pass down the seam, which got us into the red zone, and from there we ran the ball a few times with Maurice Turner, and we easily scored. Well, we should have at least had a field goal, but due to clock mismanagement, we didn't even get 3 points before half. Instead of taking the 3, I forced a bad pass to Carson Gay, who wasn't even in the end zone, and we were still tied. To start the third quarter, Oregon scored quickly, and our kickoff team, with Rich Crawford as the return man, took one all the way to tie it up again at 21. Our D got a big stop against Oregon the following possession, and now we had the ball back with a minute to go in the third. Rich, who'd been huge for us this game, got knocked out by a linebacker on a screen pass, and we ended up having to punt. Of course, Oregon scored again, and now we were playing from behind. Now, without my number one weapon, it was nut up or shut up time, no more room for excuses. I think I was playing my best ball of the season in this game, and I navigated around D linemen and stepped up to deliver a couple of strikes to my wideouts. I was putting a lot of faith in guys like Elijah Downing and Davidson, who hadn't had much PT this season, but with some crispy routes and a couple of nice runs from Turner, we were in position to tie the game. I ended up catching Oregon playing some man after our first down pickup, and I ran it in for free. Finally, we got the ball back without Oregon scoring on the other side. With 2 minutes left, we needed to put ourselves in a position to at least get a field goal, although I don't know if I really trusted our kicker after missing one from inside the 15. On second, nothing was open initially, and I didn't want to force a pass, and eventually I was forced to throw it away. I only had 2 incompletions this game, and I didn't want a third going to the other team. Downing was insanely clutch this game, and I found him in the tightest window for the first down on 3rd and long. Aside from a hiccup or 2 on this drive, we were using the clock well, and we had all of our timeouts left. We were near midfield, and I could tell Oregon's defense was getting burnt out. They've been doing a great job all game, but they've been on the field a lot too, and they were getting frustrated because I was throwing perfect balls to my receivers. I hit Bell on a slant, and we were well within field goal range at this point, so the game plan was to just run the ball with Turner. Turner did a great job on first, but on second he went out of bounds and stopped the clock, but I was kind of puzzled by Oregon's decision to not use any of their timeouts. We were kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with passing the ball when we should have just kept running it, but I think coach thought our option game was getting blown up, and the pass was there underneath all game, and it was safer. On 3rd and goal, I bought a little bit of time, hit our X factor, but Wiggins somehow didn't get in, and I was praying that we would go for it on 4th because I didn't trust our kicker at this point, but he ended up nailing the field goal, and Oregon had the ball with about 20 to go. With under 10 seconds left, Thompson got at midfield, and Oregon had 2 timeouts remaining, but they'd probably have to throw up a Hail Mary. Thompson threw up a jump ball and was nearly brought in by an Oregon receiver, but our DBs did just enough to force the incompletion, and we walked off with a close win versus Oregon, further proving that we should have been in the national championship discussion at least. Finishing the season with a perfect record, while I finished our game with a perfect passer rating with only 2 incompletions all day. This series has been going for a few months now, and I appreciate you guys for watching it. Look out for when I declare for the NFL draft, since I am a senior this season. Remember too that all of my senior teammates that are draft projections will also be in the draft class with me, and all of my previous teammates that are currently in the league. So I might end up getting drafted to a team with a former teammate or opponent, or I might not. Please let me know if you want to see my NFL career. I always love to hear your feedback in the comments.